The CEO is pregnant, and I'm the father. Those 7 words shattered Daniel Harper's carefully controlled world in seconds. A single night, buried under months of deliberate forgetting, had just resurfaced with consequences he couldn't deny. Standing in Victoria Lane's executive office, watching her deliver the news with that unreadable CEO composure, Daniel felt his knees threaten to buckle. He'd already raised one daughter alone after tragedy stole his wife. He'd built walls, routines, safety. Now everything was collapsing. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The morning started like any other Tuesday. Daniel Harper stood in his kitchen at 6:15 a.m., pouring coffee into his daughter Emma's favorite mug, the one with the fading unicorn she'd picked out 3 years ago when she was 7. The routine was sacred: coffee, breakfast, backpack check, drive to school, then 40 minutes across town to Morrison and Blake Financial, where he'd worked for the past 8 years. "Dad, you're staring at the toaster again," Emma said, sliding into her chair with wet hair and mismatched socks. Daniel blinked. "Just thinking, sweetheart. About work stuff?" "Always about work stuff." It wasn't entirely true. Lately, his mind had been wandering to places he'd locked away. Memories of Sarah, Emma's mother, who died 6 years ago from an aneurysm that gave no warning, no chance to say goodbye. He'd been thinking about how Emma was growing up so fast, how she'd started asking questions about dating and high school even though she was only 10. He'd been thinking about how tired he was of being alone, but he didn't say any of that. Instead, he dropped 2 waffles on her plate and reminded her about soccer practice. The drive to Morrison and Blake took him through the heart of downtown Seattle, past the Pike Place Market where tourists were already gathering, past the waterfront where ferries cut white lines through gray water. Daniel's world had shrunk to predictable patterns after Sarah died. Work. Emma. Home. Repeat. It was safe. Manageable. His phone buzzed as he pulled into the underground parking garage. Victoria Lane. My office. 9 a.m. Don't be late. Daniel stared at the message. Victoria Lane was the CEO of Morrison and Blake, a woman whose reputation preceded her like weather: brilliant, demanding, untouchable. In 8 years, Daniel had maybe spoken to her directly 5 times, always in meetings crowded with other senior analysts. He reported to division heads who reported to VPs who reported to her. Why would she want to see him? His mind raced through possibilities. A promotion? Unlikely. His last performance review had been good but not exceptional. A termination? His stomach tightened. Maybe they were restructuring his department. Maybe someone had complained about him. Maybe... "Daniel, you're blocking the entrance." He jumped. Marcus Chen, another senior analyst, was tapping on his window. Daniel pulled forward into his usual spot, hands gripping the steering wheel harder than necessary. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt interminable. Daniel straightened his tie 3 times. He went over his recent projects, searching for mistakes, for anything that might warrant a personal summons from the CEO. He came up empty. Victoria's assistant, a polished woman named Diane, who never smiled, looked up as he approached. "Mr. Harper, she's expecting you." Diane gestured toward the massive oak door. "Go right in." The office was exactly as Daniel remembered from the one time he'd been inside for a company-wide strategy presentation. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than his car, abstract art that he didn't understand but assumed was significant, and behind a desk that seemed designed to create distance, Victoria Lane. She stood as he entered. 39 years old, according to company lore, though she could pass for younger. Dark hair pulled back in a style that was both severe and elegant. Charcoal suit that was tailored to perfection. But it was her eyes that always struck Daniel, sharp, assessing, missing nothing. "Close the door," she said. He did. The click of the latch sounded unnaturally loud. "Sit." Daniel sat in one of the chairs facing her desk, his mind still spinning through scenarios. Victoria didn't sit. Instead, she walked to the windows, her back to him, hands clasped behind her. The silence stretched. "Do you remember March 15th?" she finally asked. Daniel's mind went blank, then stuttered. March 15th. That was the conference. The annual Morrison and Blake Leadership Conference in Portland. 3 days of seminars, networking dinners, motivational speakers. Daniel had been invited because he'd led a successful restructuring of the derivatives analysis team. He'd been honored, exhausted, and honestly a little drunk by the third night when the formal events ended and people scattered to hotel bars. He remembered Victoria had been there. He remembered a conversation at the rooftop lounge, late, after most people had left. They'd talked about work at first, then somehow the conversation had shifted. She'd mentioned being tired of being the youngest CEO in the firm's history, of board members who treated her like a diversity hire rather than someone who'd earned her position. He'd mentioned being tired of being the widower everyone pitied, of being defined by loss. They'd had more drinks. Yes, Daniel said quietly. I remember. Victoria turned from the window. Her expression was unreadable. We made a mistake that night. Mistake. The word landed like a punch. Daniel felt heat creep up his neck. They'd been two adults, both single, both consenting. It had been one night that they'd silently agreed to forget, to bury under professional distance. In the 4 months since, they'd barely made eye contact in hallways. I thought we agreed it didn't happen, Daniel said, hating how defensive he sounded. It did happen. Victoria's voice was steady, but Daniel saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear? And there are consequences. The floor seemed to tilt. What kind of consequences? Victoria walked back to her desk, but she didn't sit. She placed both hands flat on the polished surface and looked directly at him. I'm pregnant, Daniel, and you're the father. The words didn't make sense at first. Daniel heard them, but they bounced off his comprehension like stones off glass. Pregnant. Father. Then they crashed through. He couldn't finish the sentence. 12 weeks, Victoria said. Her voice remained controlled, but Daniel could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her fingers. I've confirmed it. Multiple tests, doctor's appointments. There's no mistake. Daniel's vision narrowed. The office seemed to shrink and expand simultaneously. His ears rang. We used protection, he said stupidly. Not perfect, apparently. He stood abruptly, needing to move, needing to think, but his legs felt disconnected from his body. Why are you telling me now? Why didn't you? 12 weeks? That's 3 months? I needed time to process, Victoria interrupted, to decide what I wanted to do. I don't make impulsive decisions, Daniel. You know that. Process. Daniel laughed, but it came out strangled. Process. You had 3 months to process, and I get, what, 5 minutes? I'm sorry. And she did sound sorry, genuinely. It was the first crack in her CEO armor. I know this is a shock, but I couldn't keep it from you anymore. It wouldn't be right. Daniel paced to the windows, stared out at the city he'd lived in his entire adult life. Out there, Emma was in 4th grade math class, probably doodling in the margins of her notebook. Out there, his life had been predictable, controlled, safe. What do you want from me? He asked without turning around. Nothing. He spun. Nothing? Victoria met his gaze steadily. I can handle this alone. I have resources, money, support systems. I'm not here to trap you or demand anything. I just thought you had a right to know. A right to know? Daniel's voice rose despite his efforts to control it. You're carrying my child and you think I should just… What? Walk away? Pretend it's not happening? If that's what you choose, yes. That's insane. Is it? Victoria's composure cracked further. Look at our situation, Daniel. I'm your CEO. This is already a nightmare from an HR perspective. If this gets out, when this gets out, both our careers are at risk. The board will have questions. Your colleagues will have opinions. There will be investigations into favoritism, into whether our judgment has been compromised. This doesn't just affect us personally. It affects hundreds of employees, shareholders, clients. She wasn't wrong. Daniel knew she wasn't wrong. Morrison and Blake had strict policies about workplace relationships, especially ones involving power imbalances. The fact that they'd been drunk at a conference wouldn't matter. The fact that it was one time wouldn't matter. I don't care about HR, Daniel said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. You should. I already lost one family, Victoria. His voice cracked. You think I'm going to turn my back on another child? On my own son or daughter? The silence that followed was heavy with things unsaid. Victoria's eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. What are you saying? She asked softly. I'm saying I'm in. Whatever this means, however complicated it gets, I'm in. Victoria closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, Daniel saw something that looked like relief mixed with terror. You don't know what you're signing up for. Neither do you, Daniel countered. Have you ever been pregnant before? No. Have you ever co-parented with someone you barely know? Obviously not. Then we're both stumbling blind. Daniel moved back to the chair and sat, suddenly exhausted. Tell me what happens next. Victoria finally sat as well, and the action seemed to diminish her somehow, made her look less like an untouchable CEO and more like a scared woman facing an impossible situation. I have an appointment with my OB/GYN on Thursday, she said. The first ultrasound. If you want to. She paused, took a breath. You could come, if you want to see. I want to see. A small nod. Okay, I'll send you the details. What about work? Daniel asked. We need to tell HR, don't we? Eventually. Victoria rubbed her temples. I'm going to need a few days to strategize, to figure out how to present this to the board without it looking like a complete disaster. It's not a disaster. Daniel, I'm the CEO of a major financial firm. I'm unmarried. I'm pregnant by a subordinate after what will look like a one-night stand. The optics are catastrophic. So we fix the optics. How? Daniel didn't have an answer. He was a financial analyst, good with numbers and risk assessment, not corporate damage control. I need to tell Emma, he said instead. Victoria's expression shifted to something close to panic. Your daughter. I didn't even think she's what, 9, 10? 10, and she's going to have questions. What are you going to tell her? The truth. Daniel saw Victoria's alarm and added, an age-appropriate version, but I won't lie to her. I've never lied to her. I'm not asking you to lie. Aren't you? You want me to hide this, to pretend it's not happening until you've figured out a strategy. I want us to be smart about how we handle this, Victoria said, her voice taking on that CEO edge again. I'm not your enemy, Daniel, but I'm also not going to let this destroy everything I've built. The tension crackled between them. Daniel understood her position. He did. But he also knew what it felt like to lose what mattered most. After Sarah died, he'd made Emma a promise. No more secrets, no more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Honesty, even when it hurt. I'll wait until after Thursday, Daniel said finally, after we see the ultrasound, after it feels more real. But then I'm telling her, and I'm telling my parents. They have a right to know they're going to be grandparents again. Victoria looked like she wanted to argue, but she just nodded. Fair enough. Anything else I should know? Complications? Health concerns? Not yet. Everything seems normal, according to my doctor. Normal. Daniel almost laughed. Nothing about this was normal. I should get back to work, he said, standing. People will wonder why I've been up here so long. Tell them you were getting briefed on the Henderson merger. I'll have Diane send you some files to make it look legitimate. Even in crisis, Victoria Lane was thinking 3 steps ahead. Daniel supposed that's what made her good at her job. He was halfway to the door when she spoke again. Daniel? He turned. Thank you. Her voice was quiet, vulnerable in a way he'd never heard from her. For not running. For not... Most men would have... I'm not most men, Daniel said. And that's my child. Our child. We'll figure it out. He left before she could respond, before the weight of what they were facing could crush him completely. The elevator ride down felt different than the ride up. 42 floors to descend, and Daniel's entire world had shifted. He pulled out his phone and stared at Emma's contact photo, her gap-toothed grin from last summer, ice cream smeared on her chin. How do you tell a 10-year-old that her carefully ordered world is about to change, that she's going to have a sibling, that her father, who'd been alone since her mother died, had made choices that led to consequences neither of them could have predicted? His phone buzzed. Victoria Lane, Thursday, 2 p.m., Seattle Women's Clinic. I'll text you the address. Victoria Lane. And Daniel, I meant what I said. Thank you. Daniel pocketed his phone and stepped off the elevator into the chaos of the Morrison and Blake main floor. Analysts hunched over computers, phones rang, the market tickers scrolled across massive screens. Everyone moving through their normal Tuesday. No one knew that in 26 weeks, give or take, Daniel Harper's life would include sleepless nights, diapers, bottles, and a baby that tied him permanently to a woman he barely knew. No one knew that the walls he'd built so carefully were about to come down. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Daniel sat through meetings without really hearing them. He reviewed reports without retaining information. Marcus asked him twice if he was feeling okay, and Daniel lied both times. By the time he picked Emma up from soccer practice, he'd consumed enough coffee to make his hands shake. "You're quiet," Emma observed as they drove home. She was still in her practice gear, shin guards poking out of her bag. "Just tired, sweetheart." "You're always tired lately." "Work's been busy." "Work's always busy." She wasn't wrong. Daniel glanced at her in the rearview mirror, Sarah's eyes staring back at him, that same way of seeing through his excuses. What would you think about getting a new pet?" he asked, testing the waters. Emma's face lit up. "Really? Can we get a dog? Please, please, please. I was thinking something smaller, maybe a hamster." Her enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "A hamster's okay, I guess. Why now, though?" "Just thinking about changes, about adding to our family." "It's been just us for a long time," Emma said quietly. "I know. I like just us." Daniel's throat tightened. "Yeah, baby, me too. But just us was about to become something different, something bigger. And Daniel had no idea how to prepare either of them for it. That night, after Emma went to bed, Daniel sat in his study with a glass of whiskey he didn't drink. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos. Sarah in the hospital, holding newborn Emma with exhausted joy on her face. Emma's first steps. First day of kindergarten. The years they'd built together before an invisible time bomb in Sarah's brain had stolen her away. He'd been so careful since then, so controlled. The one time he'd let his guard down, the one night he'd allowed himself to feel something other than grief and responsibility, his phone lit up with a new message. "Victoria Lane. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about Thursday, about seeing the heartbeat. Is that strange?" Daniel stared at the message. Victoria Lane, the Ice Queen CEO, awake at midnight and scared. Daniel. Not strange. I was terrified before Emma's first ultrasound. Sarah cried when she heard the heartbeat. Best sound in the world. Victoria Lane. You must miss her. Your wife. Daniel. Every day. But not the way I used to. It's different now. Victoria Lane. Different how? Daniel. The grief doesn't swallow everything anymore. I can remember her without falling apart. Emma helps. She's so much like Sarah, sometimes it hurts. But in a good way. Victoria Lane. I'm sorry I'm putting you through this. I know it's not what you planned. Daniel. Nothing worth having ever is. See you Thursday. He set the phone down and finally took a sip of whiskey. The burn felt appropriate. 2 days until he saw his second child for the first time. 2 days until everything became real in a way words couldn't make it. 2 days until there was no going back. Daniel looked at Sarah's photo on his desk, her laughing at something he'd said, the camera catching her mid-joy. I'm not replacing you, he whispered to the image. I hope you know that. But I can't walk away from this. I can't let another kid grow up without me. The photo didn't answer. But in the silence of his study, Daniel felt something like peace settle over him. This wasn't the life he'd planned. This wasn't the safe, controlled existence he'd built after loss shattered him. But maybe that was okay. Maybe control was overrated. Maybe what Emma needed, what he needed, wasn't more walls, but more life. Messy and complicated and terrifying as it was. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. And Daniel Harper, who'd spent 6 years running from anything that felt like risk, found himself actually wanting to run toward it instead. The next morning, Wednesday, Daniel woke to find Emma already in the kitchen, attempting to make pancakes. Attempting being the key word. The counter looked like a flour bomb had detonated. What's all this? Daniel asked, surveying the damage. I wanted to make you breakfast. Emma's face was smudged with batter. You always make me breakfast. I thought I should do it for you. Something in Daniel's chest cracked open. That's really sweet, Em. How about we make them together? They stood side by side at the stove, Emma carefully flipping pancakes while Daniel supervised. In moments like this, Sarah's absence ached. She'd loved lazy breakfast mornings, had always made cooking feel like an adventure rather than a chore. Dad? Emma's voice was small. Yeah, sweetheart? Are you sick or something? Daniel's hand stilled on the spatula. What? No. Why would you think that? You've been acting weird, like distracted, and yesterday you asked about getting a pet out of nowhere. She looked up at him with Sarah's too perceptive eyes. When Mom got sick, you acted like this. Like you were trying to act normal but weren't. The comparison hit Daniel like a fist to the gut. Emma had been 4 when Sarah died, old enough to remember the before and after, to recognize when her father was hiding something. He crouched down to her level. I'm not sick, Emma, I promise. I'm healthy, and I'm not going anywhere. Then what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Some things are changing, that's all. But change isn't always bad. What kind of changes? Daniel wanted to tell her right then. Wanted to explain that she was going to be a big sister, that their family was expanding in ways neither of them expected. But he'd promised Victoria he'd wait until after the ultrasound, until they knew everything was okay. I'll tell you soon, he said, after I know more. I promise it's nothing scary. Emma studied his face, clearly unconvinced but willing to let it go. Okay, but you have to promise. I promise. Cross my heart. She nodded and returned her attention to the pancakes. But Daniel saw the worry she was trying to hide, and he hated himself a little for putting it there. Work that day was torture. Daniel moved through his tasks mechanically, his mind spinning through scenarios for Thursday. What if something was wrong? What if the pregnancy wasn't viable? What if Victoria changed her mind about involving him? Marcus cornered him at lunch. Dude, you're freaking me out. What's going on? Nothing. That's bullshit and we both know it. You've been weird for days. Did someone die? No. Did you get fired? No. Are you dying? Marcus? Then what? Because you look like a man standing on a ledge. Daniel set down his sandwich, appetite gone. He and Marcus had worked together for 5 years, had grabbed drinks after work, had attended each other's kids' birthday parties. Marcus was as close to a best friend as Daniel had anymore. If I tell you something, you have to swear to keep it quiet, Daniel said. Marcus's expression shifted from concern to serious. You know I will. I'm going to be a father again. Silence. Then, holy shit, you're seeing someone? How did I not know this? I'm not seeing anyone. It's complicated. Complicated how? Daniel couldn't tell him the full truth. Not yet. Not until Victoria decided how to handle the company side of things. It was one night, months ago. She just told me. Marcus let out a low whistle. Man, that's... Wow. How are you feeling? Terrified, excited, confused, all of it. Does Emma know? Not yet. Soon. What about the mom? Is she... She's keeping it. We're going to figure out co-parenting. Shit, Daniel, this is huge. I know. Marcus leaned back, processing. You need anything? Someone to talk to? Someone to punch? Despite everything, Daniel laughed. I'm good. Just needed to tell someone before I exploded. Well, for what it's worth, you're a great dad. Emma turned out amazing despite losing her mom so young. This kid will be lucky to have you. The words settled over Daniel like a blanket. He'd been so focused on the fear and complications that he hadn't let himself feel the other part. Joy. Despite the circumstances, despite the chaos this would bring, there was a child coming. A baby he'd get to hold, to raise, to love. Thanks, man, Daniel said quietly. Anytime. And when you're ready to tell me the full story, including who the mystery woman is, I'll be here. Daniel nodded, knowing that conversation was coming sooner than Marcus realized. That night, unable to sleep, Daniel found himself researching pregnancy milestones on his phone. At 12 weeks, the baby was about the size of a plum. All major organs had formed. They were moving, though Victoria wouldn't feel it yet. By the next ultrasound, they'd likely know the sex. A girl or a boy. A a sibling for Emma, a child who would connect him to Victoria Lane forever, whether they ended up together or not. Daniel's phone showed 2:47 a.m. when a text came through. Victoria Lane, are you awake? Daniel, apparently. Victoria Lane, I'm nervous about tomorrow. Today, technically. Daniel, me too. Victoria Lane, what if something's wrong? Daniel, then we handle it together. Victoria Lane, you keep saying that, together, like it's simple. Daniel, it's not simple, but it's what we do. We show up. A long pause, then. Victoria Lane, I'm not good at needing people. Daniel, yeah, I got that impression. Victoria Lane, I've spent my whole career proving I don't need anyone, that I can do everything alone. Daniel, this is different. Victoria Lane, I know, that's what scares me. Daniel stared at the screen, at this vulnerable version of Victoria that so few people ever saw. The CEO who terrorized board members and closed billion-dollar deals was just a person, scared and alone and facing something bigger than quarterly reports. Daniel, for what it's worth, you don't have to do this alone. I'm here. Even when it's messy, even when it's hard. Victoria Lane, why? You barely know me. Daniel, I know enough. I know you're tough and smart and you don't quit. I know you're scared, but you're doing it anyway. That's what matters. Victoria Lane, you're a better person than I deserve for this situation. Daniel, maybe we both deserve a chance to get it right. Victoria Lane, I'll see you at 2. Daniel, I'll be there. Daniel set the phone down and stared at his ceiling. In less than 12 hours, he'd see his child for the first time. Heart beating, limbs forming, alive and real and his. The fear was still there, the uncertainty, the knowledge that everything was about to change in ways he couldn't control. But underneath it all, growing stronger each hour, was something else. Hope. And maybe, Daniel thought as sleep finally claimed him, hope was enough to start with. The Seattle Women's Clinic occupied the 8th floor of a modern building in Capitol Hill, all glass and clean lines that somehow managed to feel both sterile and welcoming. Daniel arrived 15 minutes early, pacing the parking garage until his watch showed 1:58 p.m. He couldn't walk in too early, didn't want to seem overeager or desperate, but he also couldn't be late. Not for this. Victoria was already in the waiting room when he entered, sitting rigidly in a chair near the window, her phone in hand but her eyes distant. She dressed down from her usual CEO armor, dark jeans, a simple cream sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. Daniel almost didn't recognize her. Hey, he said softly. She looked up, and something like relief crossed her face. You came. Of course I came. I wasn't sure. Last night I thought maybe you'd wake up and realize this was insane, that you'd... She stopped herself. Never mind. You're here. Daniel sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The waiting room held 3 other women in various stages of pregnancy, magazines scattered across coffee tables, soft music playing from hidden speakers. It felt surreal. How are you feeling? He asked. Nauseous? Terrified? The usual. Victoria's attempt at humor fell flat. I've thrown up twice today already. Morning sickness is a cruel joke. It's not just mornings. Sarah had it bad with Emma. Ginger tea helped sometimes. And crackers. I'll try that. Victoria twisted her phone in her hands. Daniel, about last night, those texts. I shouldn't have... Ms. Lane? A nurse appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. We're ready for you. Victoria stood, and Daniel followed. The nurse's eyes flickered between them, professional curiosity barely concealed. Is this the father? Yes, Victoria said before Daniel could respond. The exam room was small and clinical, dominated by an ultrasound machine that looked more complex than Daniel remembered from 10 years ago. The nurse, whose name tag read Jennifer, instructed Victoria to lie back on the exam table and pull up her sweater. This will be cold, Jennifer warned, squirting gel onto Victoria's still flat stomach. Daniel stood awkwardly near the wall, unsure where to position himself. Victoria caught his eye and gestured to the chair beside the exam table. You can sit. You should see. He sat, and suddenly he was close enough to hold her hand if he wanted to. He didn't. Not yet. Jennifer dimmed the lights and pressed the ultrasound wand to Victoria's abdomen, moving it slowly while watching the screen. Static appeared, grainy and gray and meaningless to Daniel's untrained eye. Then Jennifer paused, adjusted something, and pressed a button. A rapid whooshing sound filled the room. "There's the heartbeat," Jennifer said, smiling. "Nice and strong. About 160 beats per minute, which is perfect for 12 weeks. Daniel's breath caught. That sound, that impossibly fast drumming, was his child. Real. Alive. Not theoretical anymore, but actual. With a heart that beat and lungs that were forming and a future that was rushing toward them, whether they were ready or not. "Can you see it?" Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Jennifer angled the screen toward them. "Right here." She traced a shape with her finger. "That's the head. Those are the limbs. See how they're moving? Baby's very active today." The image was still mostly grainy static to Daniel, but as Jennifer pointed things out, he started to see it. The curve of a spine. The flutter of movement. A tiny human being, no bigger than a plum, doing backflips in Victoria's womb. "Everything looks healthy," Jennifer continued. "Good size for gestational age. Placenta is positioned well. Would you like me to take measurements?" "Yes," Victoria said, "please. I want to know everything." As Jennifer worked making notes and capturing images, Daniel watched Victoria's face. Tears streaked silently down her temples into her hair, but she was smiling, actually smiling in a way Daniel had never seen before. Unguarded and awed and completely transformed. Without thinking, he reached for her hand. She grabbed it like a lifeline, squeezing hard enough to hurt. Neither of them let go. "Okay," Jennifer said, finishing up. "Let me print these images for you, and then Dr. Patel will be in to go over everything." She left them alone in the dimmed room, the screen now blank, the heartbeat sound gone. But Daniel could still hear it echoing in his head, that rapid proof of life. "I can't believe that's real," Victoria said, her voice thick. "It's real. We made that." "We did." She turned her head to look at him, their hands still clasped. "I'm keeping it. I know we haven't discussed details or plans, but I'm keeping this baby, Daniel. I need you to know that. I never thought otherwise. And I don't expect you to be involved. I meant what I said in my office. You can walk away and I won't—" "Victoria, stop." Daniel squeezed her hand. "I'm not walking away. How many times do I need to say it? But your life, Emma, the complications, are all things we'll figure out, together." He used her own word from the night before, saw recognition flicker in her eyes. "I lost one family already. I'm not losing another kid before they're even born." Dr. Patel knocked before entering, a kind-faced woman in her 50s who radiated competence. She reviewed the ultrasound images, confirmed everything looked excellent, and asked Victoria routine questions about her health, her diet, her symptoms. "Any concerns?" Dr. Patel asked, looking between them. "Just the normal terror," Victoria admitted. Dr. Patel smiled. "That's universal. But physically, you're doing great. The baby is thriving. Keep taking your prenatal vitamins, stay hydrated, and call if you experience any bleeding or severe cramping." "What about work?" Victoria asked. "I have a demanding job. Will that hurt the baby?" "Stress isn't ideal, but plenty of women work through pregnancy without issues. Listen to your body. Rest when you need to. Don't try to be superhuman." Victoria's laugh was brittle. Too late for that. As they left the clinic, Daniel carrying a folder full of ultrasound images, the afternoon sun felt too bright after the dimmed exam room. They stood awkwardly in the parking lot, neither quite ready to leave. "Thank you for coming," Victoria said. "I know I said I could do this alone, but having you there, it mattered." "I meant what I said. I'm in this." "What happens now? Should we? She trailed off, uncertain in a way that was deeply unlike her. "We should probably talk. Actually talk. About logistics and plans and how we're going to make this work." Victoria checked her watch. "I have a board meeting in an hour." "Tomorrow then? Dinner?" "That seems very date-like." "It's a planning meeting," Daniel corrected. "We can make it as unromantic as you want. There's a diner near my place. Terrible coffee, but good pie. Very unsexy." Despite everything, Victoria smiled. "Okay, tomorrow. Text me the address." She started toward her car, a sleek black Tesla that screamed CEO, then turned back. Daniel, the heartbeat. I keep hearing it. Me too. Good. I thought I was going crazy. He watched her drive away, then sat in his own car staring at the ultrasound images. That tiny peanut shape was his child. In 6 months, give or take, he'd hold them, feed them, watch them grow. His phone buzzed. Marcus. How'd it go? Everything okay? Right. He told Marcus he had a doctor's appointment, vague enough to avoid questions. But Marcus knew about the pregnancy now. The secret circle was widening. Daniel. Everything's perfect. Healthy and strong. Marcus. That's great, man. Really great. When are you telling Emma? Daniel. Tonight. The drive home took 40 minutes through rush hour traffic, giving Daniel plenty of time to rehearse conversations in his head. None of them sounded right. How did you tell a 10-year-old that her carefully ordered world was about to shift? Emma was at his parents' house. Daniel had asked them to pick her up from school, citing a work appointment he couldn't miss. Another half-truth in a growing collection. His parents lived in Ballard, in the same house where Daniel had grown up. His mother, Carol, answered the door with flour on her apron and concern in her eyes. Everything okay? She asked, ushering him inside. You sounded strange on the phone. Where's Emma? Backyard with your father. They're building something. Carol studied her son's face. Daniel, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I just need to talk to Emma. Then I need to talk to you and Dad. And Carol's concern deepened, but she didn't push. She called Emma inside while Daniel's father, Robert, came in from the garage wiping grease from his hands. Dad's here! Emma bounded into the kitchen, face flushed from playing outside. Did you come to have dinner? Grandma's making pot roast. Actually, Em, we need to go home, but first I need to talk to you about something important. Emma's smile faded. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart, nothing like that. Daniel glanced at his parents. Could you guys give us a minute? They retreated to the living room, but Daniel knew they were close enough to hear. It didn't matter. They'd know soon enough anyway. He sat at the kitchen table and pulled Emma into the chair beside him. Remember yesterday when I said some things were changing? Emma nodded warily. Well, I found out that I'm going to have another baby. You're going to be a big sister. Silence. Emma's eyes went wide, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. You... what? I know it's a surprise. It surprised me too. But how? You don't have a wife. You don't even have a girlfriend. Emma's voice rose with each word. You can't just have a baby out of nowhere. I know this is confusing. The mom is someone I know, and we're going to have a baby together even though we're not married. Who is she? Her name is Victoria. You haven't met her yet. When did this happen? How long have you been lying to me? The accusation stung because it wasn't entirely wrong. I found out 2 days ago. As soon as I knew for sure everything was okay, I told you. I'm not lying, Emma. I would never lie to you about something this important. Tears welled in Emma's eyes. Everything's going to change. You're going to forget about me. Hey, no. Daniel pulled her into his lap like he used to when she was smaller. She resisted at first, then collapsed against him. Emma, listen to me. I could never forget about you. You're my heart. This baby doesn't change that. But you'll have a new kid to take care of. A baby. And I'm already 10. You won't need me anymore. I will always need you. Daniel's throat tightened. Always. You're my first baby. My Emma. Nothing and no one could ever replace you. Promise? I promise. Cross my heart. Emma cried into his shoulder while Daniel held her, making soothing sounds, and hating himself for causing this pain. In the doorway, he saw his mother watching with her own tears, his father's hand on her shoulder. Eventually, Emma's sobs quieted. When is the baby coming? She asked in a small voice. Probably late September. We'll know more at the next doctor's appointment. Is it a boy or a girl? We don't know yet. Too early to tell. Emma pulled back to look at him. Can I help pick the name? Relief flooded through Daniel. If she was thinking about names, she was starting to accept it. Of course you can. When the time comes, you'll be the first person I ask. And I get to be the big sister? Like, teach them stuff and help take care of them? Absolutely. Best big sister ever. A tentative smile. Okay, I guess it might be cool. But Dad? Yeah? You have to promise you won't get weird and start acting like other dads. You're still my dad first. I'm still your dad first, Daniel repeated. Always. After Emma went to watch TV, Daniel faced his parents in the kitchen. His mother was already crying. Another grandchild, Carol said, clasping her hands together. Oh, Daniel, that's wonderful. But the mother, Victoria, you said? Are you two together? Are you getting married? No and no. It's complicated, Mom. How complicated? His father's voice was stern. You have a responsibility here, son. I know that. I'm stepping up, but Victoria and I barely know each other. This wasn't planned. Babies rarely are, Carol said gently. But they're always blessings. When do we get to meet her? I don't know yet. We're still figuring things out. Well, you figure it out quickly, Robert said. That child deserves a stable home with two parents who are committed. We're committed to the baby, Dad. That doesn't mean we're committed to each other romantically. In my day. In your day is not now, Carol interrupted. Let Daniel handle this his own way. He's a good father. We know that. Daniel hugged them both, grateful for their support, even if they didn't understand the full complexity. They didn't know Victoria was his CEO, didn't know about the corporate nightmare this would create, didn't know that figuring it out meant navigating a minefield of HR policies and board expectations and public scrutiny. But they would. Everyone would. Soon. The next evening, Daniel met Victoria at the diner as planned. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. Rough day? He asked as they slid into a booth. The board is circling. They haven't said anything directly, but I can feel them watching, waiting for me to slip. Victoria picked at the menu without really seeing it. They've never fully trusted me. Too young, too female, too ambitious. If they find out about this, they'll have to deal with it. Easy for you to say. You're not the one whose entire career hangs in the balance. The waitress came to take their order. Coffee for Daniel, herbal tea for Victoria, pie for both. When she left, an uncomfortable silence settled between them. How did Emma take it? Victoria asked finally. Better than I expected. Scared at first. Worried I'd forget about her. But she came around. I can't imagine having to tell a child something like that. Having someone depend on you that completely. Victoria's hands wrapped around her tea mug. I don't know how to be a mother, Daniel. I don't have a model for it. My own mother cared more about her charity galas than she ever did about me. You'll figure it out. We both will. You already know how. You've done this before. And I was terrified then too. Sarah and I had 9 months to prepare, and I still felt completely unprepared when Emma arrived. But you learn. You adapt. Victoria looked at him directly. Why are you being so calm about this, so accepting? Most men would have run screaming. I told you, I already lost one family. I'm not making that mistake again. It's not the same thing, isn't it? A child is a child. Blood is blood. This baby deserves a father who shows up, who doesn't abandon them just because the circumstances are messy. You're a better person than I deserve. Stop saying that. Daniel's voice came out sharper than intended. You keep positioning yourself as some kind of villain in this story. You're not. We both made a choice that night. We both have to live with the consequences. That doesn't make either of us bad people. The pie arrived, breaking the tension. They ate in silence for a few minutes before Victoria spoke again. We need to tell HR soon, before someone finds out another way. Agreed. When? Monday. I'll schedule a meeting with the director. We'll present it together, show them we're handling it professionally. What's the worst they can do? Fire you, restructure my reporting lines, launch an investigation into whether our relationship constitutes a conflict of interest. Leak it to the press. Victoria ticked off possibilities on her fingers. Take your pick. They can't fire me for getting someone pregnant. No, but they can fire you for violating company policy regarding workplace relationships, especially if those relationships involve a significant power imbalance. Daniel set down his fork. So we're just supposed to roll over and accept whatever they decide? We're supposed to be smart, strategic. We present this as two mature adults who made a mistake but are committed to handling it responsibly while maintaining professional boundaries. That sounds like a corporate press release. Because that's exactly what it is. Victoria rubbed her temples. I hate this. I hate that my pregnancy is going to be dissected in board meetings and whispered about in break rooms. I hate that I have to justify my personal life to shareholders and investors. Then don't. What? Don't justify it. You're having a baby. That's not a crime or a scandal. It's just life. Daniel, you don't understand the scrutiny I'm under. Every decision I make is questioned. She stopped, grimacing. What's wrong? Nothing. Just nausea. But her face had gone pale. You want to leave? Get some air? Victoria shook her head, breathing slowly through her nose. It'll pass. It always does. Daniel watched her struggle, feeling helpless. Is there anything I can do? No. Yes. I don't know. She looked up at him, vulnerable. I'm scared, Daniel. I've run multi-million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but this terrifies me. What if I'm terrible at it? What if I can't balance work and motherhood? What if the board forces me out and I lose everything I've built? Then you'll build something new. It's not that simple. It is that simple. Maybe not easy, but simple. Daniel reached across the table, covering her hand with his. You're the most competent person I've ever met. If you can negotiate hostile takeovers and manage hundreds of employees, you can handle a baby. Babies don't respond to PowerPoint presentations. Despite everything, Daniel laughed. No, they really don't, but you'll figure out what works, and I'll be there to help. Victoria turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. We really are in this together, aren't we? Yeah, we really are. They stayed at the diner until closing, talking through logistics and fears and tentative plans. Where the baby would live, primarily with Victoria, but with regular custody arrangements for Daniel, how they'd handle medical appointments and parenting decisions, what they'd tell people about their relationship status. We should probably have a story, Victoria said as they walked to their cars. Something consistent for when people ask. The truth seems easiest. We're co-parenting. We're committed to our child, but not to each other romantically. That's going to confuse people. People are always confused by things that don't fit neat categories. Let them be confused. Victoria smiled despite herself. You're surprisingly rebellious for a financial analyst. I have hidden depths. Clearly. She paused at her car. Monday, HR, 10 a.m. I'll send you a meeting invite. I'll be there. Daniel? She hesitated. Thank you. For dinner? For listening? For not running away screaming? Anytime. That's what co-parents do, right? Show up for each other. He watched her drive away, then sat in his own car processing everything. In 3 days, their secret would stop being secret. The careful walls between personal and professional would come crashing down. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Emma. Grandma says I can help decorate the baby's room. Can we paint it purple? Daniel smiled despite his exhaustion. Daniel. We'll see. Ask me again in a few months. Emma. That means yes. Love you, Dad. Daniel. Love you too, sweetheart. The weekend passed in a blur of normalcy, soccer games and grocery shopping and homework help. But underneath the routine, Daniel felt the countdown ticking. Monday morning approached like a storm on the horizon. Sunday night, Victoria called instead of texting. I can't sleep, she admitted when he answered. I keep rehearsing what I'm going to say tomorrow. Want to practice? I've already practiced with my mirror about 50 times. I'm not sure another run-through will help. Then talk to me about something else. Distract yourself. Like what? I don't know. Tell me something about yourself I don't know. Something that's not in your corporate bio. Silence. Then, I wanted to be a pianist when I was younger. Studied seriously until I was 16. Even applied to Juilliard. What happened? Reality. My father sat me down and explained that music wasn't a real career, that I needed to focus on something practical. Business, law, medicine. So I did. I got my MBA and climbed the corporate ladder and became exactly what he wanted me to be. Do you regret it? Sometimes. Late at night, I'll hear a piece I used to play and wonder what might have been. Victoria's voice went soft. But then I remember that I'm good at this. at leading, at strategy, at making impossible things happen. Maybe I would have been a mediocre pianist. At least I'm an excellent CEO. You could be both. Not in the world I live in. Daniel heard the resignation in her voice, the way she'd accepted limitations that maybe didn't need to exist. When this is all over, after the baby comes, after things settle, you should play again. For yourself, not for a career. Just because it makes you happy. When was the last time you did something just because it made you happy? Victoria challenged. The question caught Daniel off guard. When was the last time? Before Sarah died, probably. Back when happiness felt like a renewable resource instead of something to be rationed and protected. Fair point, he admitted. We're both terrible at taking care of ourselves. Maybe the baby will force us to get better at it. For their sake, if not our own. Maybe. They talked until nearly midnight about nothing and everything, childhood memories, favorite movies, embarrassing moments they'd never shared with anyone. By the time they hung up, Daniel felt like he knew Victoria better than he had after months of working in the same company. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Daniel dressed carefully in his best suit, the one he usually reserved for presentations to major clients. Armor for the battle ahead. Victoria had scheduled the HR meeting for 10 a.m. in a small conference room on the 40th floor. Daniel arrived 5 minutes early to find her already there, looking every inch the CEO in a navy suit that somehow managed to look both powerful and feminine. Ready? She asked. As I'll ever be. The HR director, Margaret Cho, arrived precisely at 10. She was a woman in her early 50s with sharp eyes and a reputation for being both fair and uncompromising. Good morning, Margaret said, settling into her chair with a tablet and a neutral expression. Victoria, you said this meeting was urgent and confidential. What's this about? Victoria sat straight, shoulders back, CEO mode fully engaged. I'm pregnant. Daniel is the father. We wanted to disclose this before you heard it through office gossip. To Margaret's credit, her expression barely flickered. I see. How far along? 12 weeks. And when did the relationship begin? There is no relationship, Daniel interjected. It was one night at the leadership conference in March. Margaret's eyes sharpened. A company-sponsored event. Yes, Victoria confirmed. We're aware this creates potential conflicts of interest. We're prepared to do whatever's necessary to address them. Margaret was quiet for a long moment, making notes on her tablet. Walk me through your plan for managing this situation professionally. Victoria launched into the prepared speech, how they'd maintain strict professional boundaries, how Daniel would transfer to a different department if necessary, how all decisions regarding his career would be made by someone other than Victoria to avoid any appearance of favoritism. And personally, Margaret asked, what's your custody arrangement? We're working on that, Daniel said. We're committed to co-parenting effectively. Are you planning to marry? No, they said in unison. Margaret's eyebrow rose slightly. The board is going to have questions, concerns about judgment, about Morrison and Blake's reputation, about whether this represents a pattern of behavior. This is not a pattern, Victoria said firmly. This was one isolated incident with someone I respect, and we're handling it responsibly. I'll need to brief the board, Margaret said. They'll want to meet with both of you, separately. Daniel's stomach sank. When? I'll arrange something for later this week. In the meantime, I need you both to document everything. The timeline, your plans for managing conflicts, your custody arrangements. Complete transparency. Of course, Victoria said. As they left the conference room, Daniel felt like he'd been through a ringer. Margaret hadn't been hostile, but she hadn't been warm either. Professional, clinical, exactly what the situation required. That went better than I expected, Victoria murmured as they waited for the elevator. The board meetings will be worse. I know. She glanced at him. Are you ready for that? For them to question your character, your judgment, your fitness to work here? Are you? I've been questioned my entire career. I'm used to it. The elevator arrived and they stepped in. Alone, Victoria's shoulders sagged slightly. Thank you for having my back in there. We're a team now. That's what teams do. The rest of the week proved Victoria right. The board meetings were brutal. Daniel sat through an hour of pointed questions from men in expensive suits who looked at him like he'd committed a crime. Had he targeted Victoria because of her position? Had he expected preferential treatment? Did he understand the seriousness of violating company policy? By the end, Daniel wanted to punch something. Victoria's meeting was apparently worse. She emerged pale and tight-lipped, refusing to discuss what had been said. "They're making me take a leave of absence," she finally admitted Friday evening. They'd fallen into a pattern of checking in daily, phone calls that started professional and ended personal. "Starting next month, until after the baby is born." "Can they do that?" "They're calling it a voluntary medical leave, for my health and the baby's health, but we both know what it really is: damage control." "That's bullshit. That's corporate politics." Victoria's voice was hollow. "I built this company into what it is. I've worked 80-hour weeks for 5 years, and now they're pushing me out because I'm pregnant. Fight it. Sue them. And drag Morrison and Blake through a pregnancy discrimination lawsuit? That helps no one, least of all the baby." She was quiet for a moment. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I do need to step back. The stress can't be good." "Don't let them make you doubt yourself." Too late. Daniel heard the defeat in her voice and hated it. Hated that the brilliant, fierce woman who'd stood in that ultrasound room watching her baby's heartbeat was now being forced into a corner by men who saw pregnancy as weakness. "We'll figure this out," he promised. "All of it. The board, the custody, the future. We'll figure it out together." "You keep saying that." "Because I mean it." A long exhale. "I'm tired, Daniel, so tired." "Then rest. Take care of yourself and the baby. Everything else can wait." They hung up, and Daniel sat in his darkening living room thinking about power and vulnerability, about how quickly everything could change. 6 weeks ago, his biggest worry had been meeting quarterly targets. Now he was preparing to become a father again while watching Victoria fight battles she shouldn't have to fight. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Emma, can Victoria come to dinner this weekend? I want to meet her." Daniel stared at the message. He'd told Emma about Victoria in abstract terms, but they hadn't met yet, hadn't even discussed when that meeting should happen. He called Victoria back. "Emma wants to meet you," he said when she answered. "Oh, when?" "This weekend, dinner at our place. Nothing fancy, just Emma wants to know who you are." "I'm terrified of 10-year-olds. Despite everything, Daniel laughed. "You run a multi-million-dollar company, but a fourth grader scares you?" "Children are unpredictable. I don't know how to talk to them. I talk to her like a person. That's all she wants." Daniel softened his voice. "She's curious. She wants to understand who's going to be in her sibling's life." "What if she hates me?" "She won't hate you, but Victoria, I need you to be real with her. Not CEO Victoria, just you." Silence. Then, "Okay, this weekend. What should I bring?" "Just yourself, and maybe an appetite. Emma's helping me make lasagna." Saturday evening arrived with Daniel more nervous than he'd expected. Emma had cleaned the house twice, changed her outfit 3 times, and asked approximately 400 questions about what Victoria was like. When the doorbell rang at 6, Emma beat Daniel to the door. Victoria stood on the porch looking impossibly out of place in their suburban neighborhood. Designer jeans and a cashmere sweater, her hair in a loose braid. She held a bottle of sparkling cider and looked terrified. "Hi," she said to Emma. "You must be Emma. I've heard a lot about you." Emma studied her with unnerving intensity. "You're having my dad's baby." "Emma," Daniel intervened. "Let her come inside first before the interrogation." But Victoria smiled, a real smile. "Yes, I am. I know that's probably weird for you." "Kind of." Emma stepped back to let her in. "But Dad says you're nice and that the baby is healthy." "Very healthy. Would you like to see the ultrasound pictures?" Emma's eyes lit up. "Really? You have them?" They settled on the couch, Emma squeezed between Daniel and Victoria, poring over the grainy images while Victoria explained what everything was. Daniel watched them, this strange new constellation his life had become, and felt something settle in his chest. Maybe they could make this work after all. Dinner that evening turned out better than Daniel had dared hope. Emma asked Victoria direct questions with the brutal honesty only children possessed, and Victoria answered them with surprising patience. By the time they'd finished the lasagna, Emma was showing Victoria her room, her soccer trophies, the box of baby clothes she'd found in the attic that she insisted the new baby should wear. "Mom bought this one before I was born," Emma said, holding up a tiny yellow onesie with ducks on it. "Dad says I wore it home from the hospital." Victoria took the onesie carefully, like it was made of glass. "It's beautiful. Are you sure you want to share it?" "The baby's my brother or sister," Emma said matter-of-factly. "That means they get Mom's stuff too. She would have wanted that." Daniel, standing in the doorway, felt his throat close. Emma had been so young when Sarah died, but she remembered. In her own way, she was making space for this new life while honoring the one they'd lost. Victoria looked at Daniel, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Thank you, Emma. I'll take very good care of it." After Emma went to bed, Daniel walked Victoria to her car. The September night was cool, the first hint of autumn in the air. "She's incredible," Victoria said. "You've done an amazing job with her." "She did most of it herself. I just tried not to screw up too badly." "You're being modest." Victoria leaned against her car, looking exhausted but more relaxed than Daniel had seen her in weeks. "She's kind and curious and so emotionally intelligent. That doesn't happen by accident. She likes you. That's not easy to earn. I was terrified she'd hate me, that she'd see me as someone taking her father away. She sees you as someone giving her a sibling. That's different." Victoria nodded, then winced slightly, her hand going to her stomach. "You okay?" Daniel asked. "Fine. Just some cramping. The doctor said it's normal as everything stretches and grows." But something in her voice made Daniel uneasy. "How bad is the cramping?" "It's manageable. I've had it on and off for a few days." "A few days?" "Victoria, you should have said something." "It's normal," she repeated, but her face had gone pale in the porch light. "The doctor said—" She stopped mid-sentence, her expression shifting to something like fear. "Daniel? What?" "I'm bleeding." The world narrowed to a pinpoint. "What?" "I'm bleeding. I can feel it." Victoria's voice rose, panic breaking through her usual control. "Oh God, something's wrong." Daniel's medical training from years of parenting kicked in. "How much? Is it spotting or— I don't know. I need to get to a hospital." "You're not driving. Come on." Daniel grabbed her arm, leading her toward his car. "I'm taking you to Swedish. It's 10 minutes from here." "Emma, you can't leave, Emma. I'll call my parents from the car. They'll come stay with her." Daniel was already dialing with one hand while helping Victoria into the passenger seat with the other. "Mom, I need you at my house now. It's an emergency." His mother's voice rose in alarm, but Daniel cut her off. "Just come. I'll explain later. 10 minutes, please." He threw the phone in the cup holder and pulled out of the driveway faster than he should have. Victoria was breathing in short, panicked gasps beside him. "It's going to be okay," Daniel said, trying to sound calm while his own heart hammered. "Bleeding doesn't always mean something's wrong. Lots of women have bleeding and everything's fine. At 12 weeks? Daniel, I've read everything. Bleeding at 12 weeks? Don't Google diagnose yourself right now. We're going to the hospital and they're going to check everything and it's going to be fine." But he didn't know that. Neither of them knew that. All they knew was that Victoria was bleeding and the baby they'd heard heartbeat from just days ago might be in danger. The drive to Swedish Medical Center felt both endless and too short. Daniel pulled up to the emergency entrance and left his keys with a valet, not caring about proper procedure. Victoria could barely walk, doubled over with pain that had intensified in the last 5 minutes. "I need help," Daniel called to the triage nurse. "She's pregnant and bleeding." Everything after that became a blur of fluorescent lights and urgent voices. Nurses descended with a wheelchair, whisking Victoria away while firing questions. How far along? When did the bleeding start? How much pain on a scale of 1 to 10? Daniel tried to follow, but a nurse stopped him. "Are you the father?" "Yes." "Wait here. We'll get you as soon as she's examined." "I want to be with her." "Sir, we need to assess her first. Please wait here." Daniel found himself alone in a waiting room that smelled of antiseptic and fear. He paced, checked his phone compulsively, paced some more. His mother had texted that she was at his house with Emma. Marcus had somehow heard and texted asking if he needed anything. Daniel ignored both messages. 15 minutes crawled by, then 20, then 30. Finally, a doctor appeared. "Mr. Harper?" Daniel's heart stopped. Is the baby? Victoria's stable for now, but we're concerned. The bleeding is significant and she's having contractions. We're doing an ultrasound to check the baby's status. Contractions? But it's too early. She's only 16 weeks. The doctor's expression was carefully neutral. "I know. We're doing everything we can to stop the labor, but I need you to prepare yourself for the possibility that we might not be able to." The words didn't compute. Couldn't compute. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the next few hours are critical. We'll know more soon. You can see her now, but she's very upset. Try to keep her calm." Daniel followed the doctor through a maze of hallways to a room where Victoria lay in a hospital bed, monitors attached to her stomach and arm, an IV dripping clear fluid. Her face was streaked with tears, her hair matted with sweat. "Daniel?" Her voice broke on his name. He was at her side instantly, taking her hand. "I'm here. I'm right here." "Something's wrong. I can feel it. The baby isn't—" A sob choked off her words. "Hey, no, don't think like that. They're checking everything right now." A nurse wheeled in an ultrasound machine, and Daniel felt déjà vu crash over him. Just last week, they'd been in a different room with a different ultrasound, watching their baby flip and move. Now they were here, praying for any sign of life. The nurse squirted gel on Victoria's stomach and pressed the wand against her skin. The screen filled with static. More static. Victoria's grip on Daniel's hand became painful. Then, a flicker. Movement. And that sound, that beautiful, rapid drumming. "There's the heartbeat," the nurse said, and Daniel could have kissed her. "Baby's still fighting." Victoria sobbed harder, but this time with relief. "It's alive! Oh God, it's still alive!" "Heart rate is lower than we'd like," the nurse continued, her professional mask slipping into something more sympathetic. "And baby is showing signs of distress. But they're hanging in there." A doctor Daniel didn't recognize entered the room, reviewing the ultrasound images on a tablet. "Miss Lane? I'm Dr. Morrison, the OB on call. We need to talk about your options." "Options?" Victoria's voice was raw. "Your placenta is partially abrupting, separating from the uterine wall. That's what's causing the bleeding and triggering contractions. At 16 weeks, the baby can't survive outside the womb. Our goal is to stop the labor and keep the baby inside as long as possible." "How do we do that?" Daniel asked when Victoria seemed unable to speak. "Strict bed rest, medications to stop contractions, monitoring. But I have to be honest with you both. Placental abruption is serious. Even with intervention, we might not be able to prevent premature labor." "And if that happens," Victoria whispered. Dr. Morrison's expression was kind, but unflinching. "At 16 weeks, survival isn't possible. I'm sorry." The words hung in the air like poison. Daniel felt Victoria's whole body trembling, felt his own world tilting sideways. They could lose this. After everything, the shock, the acceptance, the planning, the tentative hope, they could lose it all. "What are our chances?" Daniel heard himself ask. "Of making it through this? Hard to say. Every case is different, but I'd estimate maybe 50-50 right now." 50-50, a coin flip, the baby's life depending on odds that weren't nearly good enough. "What do we do?" Victoria asked. "Right now, what do I do?" "We're admitting you. You'll be on bed rest starting immediately, and I mean complete bed rest. No getting up except to use the bathroom. We'll give you medications to try to stop the contractions and monitor you and the baby constantly. If we can get you through the next 48 hours without the bleeding getting worse, our chances improve significantly." Victoria nodded, tears still streaming. "Okay, whatever it takes. I'll do whatever it takes." They moved Victoria to a private room in the antepartum unit, a floor Daniel learned was dedicated to high-risk pregnancies. The room was nicer than the ER. Real furniture, a window overlooking the city lights. But it was still a hospital room. Still a place where Victoria would be trapped, while her body threatened to reject the baby they'd made. By midnight, Victoria's parents had arrived. Daniel met them in the hallway, Gerald Lane, a stern man in an expensive suit despite the late hour, and Patricia Lane, elegant and composed even in crisis. "Where is she?" Patricia demanded. "What happened?" Daniel explained as best he could, watching Gerald's face harden with each word. When he finished, Gerald looked at him like something stuck to his shoe. "You're the father." "Yes, sir." "The employee who got my daughter pregnant and jeopardized her career." "Dad, stop!" Victoria's voice came from the doorway to her room. She'd insisted on getting up to greet them despite doctor's orders. "This isn't Daniel's fault. If you're going to blame someone, blame both of us equally." Patricia rushed to her daughter's side. "Sweetheart, you should be in bed." "I'm fine for 2 minutes." But Victoria leaned heavily on the doorframe, her face still pale. "I need you both to understand something. Daniel and I are having this baby together. He's been nothing but supportive and kind. Whatever opinions you have about the situation, you keep them to yourself." Gerald's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "We're here to help. Whatever you need." "I need you to not make this harder than it already is." Victoria's voice cracked. "I might lose this baby, our grandchild. Can we focus on that instead of judging me?" Patricia guided Victoria back to bed while Gerald stood rigidly in the hallway with Daniel. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "I know this isn't how you wanted things to go," Daniel finally said. "Trust me, it's not how I wanted them either. But I care about your daughter, and I care about this baby. I'm not going anywhere." Gerald studied him for a long moment. "See that you don't. My daughter doesn't need any more disappointments in her life." It wasn't approval, but it wasn't open hostility either. Daniel would take it. He returned to Victoria's room to find her arguing with her mother about calling the office. "I need to let them know I won't be in on Monday," Victoria was saying. "Absolutely not," Patricia countered. "Work is the last thing you should be thinking about right now. Work is how we pay for this hospital room. Work is not more important than your life or this baby's life." Patricia's voice was uncharacteristically sharp. "For once in your life, Victoria, let someone else handle things." Victoria looked like she wanted to argue more but didn't have the energy. She sank back against the pillows, defeated in a way Daniel had never seen her. "I'll call HR on Monday," Daniel offered. "Explain the situation. They'll understand. The board will see this as weakness, proof I can't handle the pressure." "Let them." Daniel moved closer to the bed. "You almost lost our baby tonight. Screw the board. Screw Morrison and Blake. None of it matters if—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Victoria reached for his hand. "I'm scared." "I know. Me too." Patricia watched them with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read, then quietly excused herself to give them privacy. Gerald had already disappeared to make phone calls in the hallway. Alone, Victoria's composure finally cracked completely. "What if we lose them, Daniel? What if I can't? What if my body can't?" Don't go there yet." Daniel climbed carefully onto the bed beside her, mindful of all the wires and monitors. "We focus on right now. On getting through tonight. Tomorrow we worry about tomorrow. You don't have to stay. I know you need to get back to Emma." "My parents are with Emma. I'm staying." "The nurses said visiting hours end at—" "I don't care about visiting hours. I'm not leaving you alone in here." Victoria turned her face into his shoulder and cried until she had nothing left. Daniel held her, stroked her hair, murmured meaningless, comforting sounds. Outside the window, Seattle glittered in the dark, the city carrying on while inside this room, time had stopped. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, Victoria finally fell into an exhausted sleep. Daniel eased himself off the bed and into the chair beside it, watching the monitors that tracked both her vitals and the baby's heartbeat. That steady beeping was the only thing tethering him to hope. His phone buzzed quietly. "Emma. Emma. Grandma told me Victoria's in the hospital. Is the baby okay?" Daniel stared at the message, trying to figure out how to answer. Emma had been so excited about the baby, had already started making plans and picking out names. How did you tell a 10-year-old that her sibling might not make it? Daniel. "We're hoping. The doctors are doing everything they can. I'll know more in the morning." Emma. "I'm scared, Dad." Daniel. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Emma. "Can you tell Victoria I'm thinking about her and the baby? Daniel. I will. Love you. Get some sleep. Emma. Love you too. Daniel set the phone down and returned his gaze to Victoria's sleeping form. Even in sleep, she looked tense, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. The next 48 hours crawled by in a haze of medication adjustments and monitoring. Victoria remained on strict bed rest while contractions came and went, each one sending both of them into panic until it subsided. The bleeding slowed but didn't stop completely. The baby's heartbeat fluctuated, sometimes strong, sometimes worryingly weak. Daniel barely left the hospital. He went home once to shower and check on Emma, but otherwise he maintained a vigil in Victoria's room. They played cards to pass the time, watched terrible daytime television, and had conversations that ranged from profound to ridiculous to desperate. If we make it through this, Victoria said on the second night, I'm never taking anything for granted again. We will make it through. You don't know that. I have to believe it. The alternative is, I can't think about the alternative. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then asked, what would you have named them, if you could choose? Are we finding out the sex? Not yet, but hypothetically. Daniel considered. For a girl, maybe Charlotte. That was Sarah's grandmother's name. She always loved it. Charlotte Harper. Victoria tested the sound. I like that. What about a boy? I don't know. I never really thought about boy names. What about you? James for a boy, after my grandfather. He was the only person in my family who believed I could do anything I set my mind to. James Harper, Daniel said. Strong name. Or Charlotte Lane. We haven't discussed last names. Does it matter? Legally, yes. Personally, Victoria shifted uncomfortably in the bed. I don't know. What's normal for this situation? Nothing about this situation is normal. We'll figure it out if we get there. When we get there, Victoria corrected, you're the one who keeps saying we have to believe. A nurse entered to check Victoria's vitals, breaking the moment. After she left, Victoria picked up the conversation again. Daniel, if something happens, if I don't make it through this, don't. Let me finish. If something happens to me, the baby needs, you're both going to be fine. Promise me. Victoria grabbed his hand with surprising strength. Promise me if it comes down to a choice, you save the baby. I don't care what it costs me. You save our child. Victoria, they're not going to make me choose. Promise me. Daniel looked into her fierce, frightened eyes and knew she wouldn't let this go. I promise. But it won't come to that. You can't know that. I know you. I know you're the most stubborn, determined person I've ever met. If willpower can keep that baby safe, you've got it covered. Despite everything, Victoria almost smiled. Stubbornness as a medical treatment. I should write a paper. $1,000,000 idea right there. The third day brought cautious optimism. Victoria's contractions had decreased significantly, and the bleeding had stopped. Dr. Morrison examined her and declared it safe to continue the pregnancy under strict monitoring. You're not out of the woods yet, the doctor warned, but you've made it past the critical window. If we can keep you stable for another week, I'll feel much better about your chances. Another week in the hospital? Victoria looked stricken. At minimum, possibly longer depending on how things progress. The placental abruption hasn't fully healed. One wrong move and we could be right back where we started. After the doctor left, Victoria turned her face to the wall. Daniel could see her shoulders shaking. Hey, he said softly, this is good news. We're past the worst of it. I can't do another week in here? I can't just lie here doing nothing while everything falls apart. What's falling apart? My career, my company, my entire life. Victoria's voice was muffled against the pillow. Gerald told me the board met yesterday. They're discussing permanent replacements for my position. They can't do that. You're on medical leave. They can do whatever they want. I'm expendable, Daniel. Everyone is. You built that company. You made Morrison and Blake what it is. And now they're erasing me like I never existed. She turned back to face him, and Daniel was shocked by the defeat in her eyes. Maybe they're right. Maybe I can't do it all. Maybe trying to be CEO and mother is just... Maybe I have to choose. You shouldn't have to choose. No one should have to choose between career and family. But women do, every day. We're the ones who carry the babies, who sacrifice our bodies and our careers while men just... She stopped herself. I'm sorry, this isn't your fault. It kind of is. Takes two to make a baby. You know what I mean. Victoria gestured at the hospital room, at herself trapped in the bed. You get to leave here, go to work, live your life. I'm stuck, watching everything I worked for slip away while my body tries to kill our child. The bitterness in her voice cut deep. Because she wasn't wrong, Daniel could leave. He had left, going to the office yesterday for an important meeting because his body wasn't the one keeping the baby alive. The inequity of it was staggering. I'm sorry, he said, inadequate but sincere. I'm sorry you're bearing the physical burden of this. I'm sorry the world is set up to punish women for biology. I'm sorry I can't make it fair. Victoria's expression softened slightly. It's not your fault. I'm angry and scared and I don't know how to process it. Then be angry, be scared. You don't have to be strong every second. Yes, I do. If I'm not strong, everything falls apart. I'm here. I'll hold things together when you can't. They sat in silence for a while, the monitors beeping steadily. Outside the window, afternoon sun painted the city gold. Somewhere out there, Emma was in school learning fractions. Marcus was probably covering Daniel's workload without complaint. Life continued, indifferent to the small drama playing out in this hospital room. Daniel's phone rang. Margaret Cho from HR. I need to take this, he told Victoria, stepping into the hallway. Daniel, I heard about Victoria, Margaret said without preamble. How is she? Stable, but she'll be in the hospital for at least another week. I see. And the baby? Holding on. Margaret was quiet for a moment. I'm calling because the board has asked me to discuss your position at Morrison and Blake. Daniel's stomach dropped. Are you firing me? No, but we need to address the conflict of interest situation. We're offering you a lateral transfer to our Boston office, same salary and title. It would eliminate any concerns about your relationship with Victoria affecting business decisions. Boston? That's across the country. I'm aware, but it's the cleanest solution for everyone involved. Everyone except me and my daughter and the baby on the way. Daniel kept his voice level with effort. When do you need an answer? End of the week. I'll think about it. Daniel, I should mention this offer is a courtesy. If you decline, we'll likely have to pursue other options that may not be as favorable. The threat was clear. Take the transfer or get fired. I understand, Daniel said. I'll be in touch. He ended the call and stood in the hallway, processing. Boston. 3,000 miles from Emma's school, his parents, the life they'd built in Seattle. 3,000 miles from Victoria and the baby. But if he stayed and Morrison and Blake fired him, he'd be unemployed with a 10-year-old to support and a second child on the way. The hospital room door opened and Victoria appeared, shuffling carefully with an IV pole. You're supposed to be in bed, Daniel said automatically. I needed to see your face. That was about work, wasn't it? They're offering me a transfer to Boston. Victoria's expression went carefully blank. When? As soon as possible. If I don't take it, they'll probably fire me. You should take it. What? It's a good opportunity. Same pay, clean break from all this mess. Victoria's voice was too controlled, her CEO mask firmly in place. It makes sense. It makes sense for Morrison and Blake. It makes no sense for our family. We're not a family, Daniel. We're two people having a baby together. That's different. The words hit like a slap. Is that really what you think? It's the reality of the situation. You can't throw away your career for someone you barely know and a baby that might not... She stopped, her composure cracking. Take the job, Daniel. Don't be stupid about this. I'm not leaving you to go through this alone. I won't be alone. I have my parents, my resources. Stop. Just stop. Daniel moved closer, lowering his voice so other patients wouldn't hear. You're scared, and you're trying to push me away because that's what you do. But I'm not going anywhere. I don't care about the job or the board or any of it. You should care. You have Emma to think about. I am thinking about Emma. I'm thinking about what kind of man I want to be for her, what kind of example I want to set. And that's not someone who abandons his family when things get hard. We're not your family, Victoria repeated, but her voice wavered. Yes, you are. Maybe we didn't plan it this way. Maybe we're not married or in love or in any of the traditional things, but that baby in there, he gestured to her stomach. That's my child. And you're their mother. That makes us family whether you want to accept it or not. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. What if I lose them anyway? What if you give up everything and the baby doesn't make it? Then we'll grieve together, and we'll get through it together, just like we're getting through this together. A nurse rushed over. Ms. Lane, you need to be in bed immediately. Victoria let herself be led back to the room, but she held Daniel's gaze the whole way. Once she was settled, the nurse scolded her about the dangers of getting up without assistance, checked all the monitors, and finally left them alone again. You're an idiot, Victoria said quietly. Probably. Boston would be better for your career. I don't care. You should. Well, I don't. Daniel sat in his usual chair. I'm staying in Seattle. I'll find another job if Morrison and Blake fires me. I'll figure it out. Just like that. Just like that. Victoria studied him for a long moment, searching his face for something. Why are you doing this, really? Daniel thought about his answer, wanting to get it right. Because 6 years ago, I lost someone I loved and I couldn't do anything about it. Sarah died and I was helpless to save her. But this time I can show up. I can be present. I can fight for what matters. And maybe the baby will be okay, or maybe they won't. But at least I'll know I didn't run when things got scary. You really mean that? Every word. A single tear traced down Victoria's cheek. Thank you. For staying, for being here, for all of it. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. She reached for his hand. I've been alone for so long, I forgot what it felt like to have someone in my corner, even when they're being stupidly noble about it. I prefer heroically noble. Despite everything, Victoria laughed, a real laugh that echoed in the sterile room and made the monitors beep a little faster. And just like that, they crossed another invisible line. Not lovers, not quite friends, but something new. Something forged in crisis and fear and desperate hope. Partners. Parents. Family. 3 more days passed with agonizing slowness. Victoria remained stable, the baby's heartbeat steady, the danger receding increment by increment. Daniel called Margaret and declined the Boston offer, accepting whatever consequences that brought. Emma visited every evening, bringing homework to do in the hospital room and asking Victoria questions about what babies needed. On the 7th day, Dr. Morrison declared Victoria well enough to go home, on strict bed rest with twice-weekly monitoring, but home nonetheless. You're not out of danger yet, the doctor warned. The placental abruption is still there. Any increase in stress or activity could trigger another crisis. I need you taking this seriously. I will, Victoria promised. Complete bed rest until when? At minimum, until 32 weeks. Then we'll reevaluate. 32 weeks. Another 4 months of Victoria trapped in bed, unable to work or live normally. Daniel saw the reality hit her, saw her struggle to accept it, but she nodded. Okay, whatever it takes. They discharged her that afternoon with a stack of prescriptions and instructions. Patricia insisted Victoria come stay with them, but Victoria refused. I need my own space, she said firmly. I'll hire a nurse if necessary, but I'm going home. In the end, they compromised. Victoria would stay at her penthouse apartment with a nurse checking in daily, and Daniel would stop by regularly to help with anything she needed. As Daniel drove Victoria home from the hospital, Seattle spread out before them in late afternoon light. The city looked exactly the same as it had a week ago, but everything had changed. Thank you, Victoria said softly as they pulled into her building's parking garage, for everything this week. I don't know how I would have... You don't have to keep thanking me. I know. But I want you to know this meant something. You being there, it changed things. Daniel looked at her, at this complicated woman who'd crashed into his life and turned everything upside down. For me, too. They sat in the parking garage for another minute, neither quite ready to move forward into whatever came next. But the baby's heartbeat echoed in both their minds, steady, strong, fighting. And that, Daniel thought, was enough reason to keep fighting too. Victoria's penthouse overlooked Elliott Bay from the 20th floor, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist decor, that screamed success and loneliness in equal measure. Daniel helped her inside, acutely aware of how vulnerable she looked navigating her own space with hesitant steps, one hand protectively over her stomach. "The bedroom's through there," she said, gesturing down a hallway. "I should probably—" "Let me help you get settled first." Daniel guided her to the massive sectional sofa. "Doctor said complete bed rest. That means bed or couch, nothing else." "I'm aware of the restrictions." But Victoria sank gratefully onto the cushions, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. "There's a spare bedroom if Emma ever wants to stay over. Once the baby comes, I mean. For visits." The casual mention of their future co-parenting arrangement felt surreal. Daniel looked around the pristine apartment, trying to imagine a baby here among the white furniture and abstract art, trying to imagine Emma sleeping in the spare room while her half-sibling napped down the hall. "We should probably talk about that," Daniel said. "Custody arrangements, schedules, all the logistics we've been avoiding." "Not today. I can't think about logistics today." Victoria closed her eyes. "Today, I just want to be grateful we made it home." Daniel understood. The past week had drained them both, left them running on fumes and hope. Big conversations could wait. "I'll make you some tea," he offered. "Then I need to get home to Emma, but I'll come by tomorrow to check on you." "You don't have to do that." "I know. I want to." He found Victoria's kitchen immaculate and barely used, the refrigerator containing mostly takeout containers and bottled water. Daniel made a mental note to stock it with actual food before his next visit. The tea kettle, expensive and European, took him 3 tries to figure out. When he returned to the living room, Victoria was asleep, her head tilted against the sofa cushions, one hand still resting on her barely visible bump. Daniel set the tea on the coffee table and grabbed a throw blanket from a nearby chair, draping it carefully over her. She looked younger in sleep, less like the Ice Queen CEO, and more like someone who desperately needed protecting. Daniel found himself studying her face, memorizing details he'd never noticed before. The small scar near her left eyebrow, the way her hair fell across her cheek, the slight furrow between her brows, even in rest. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. "Emma." "Emma. When are you coming home? I made dinner." "Well, Grandma helped, but I did most of it." Daniel. "On my way now. Save me some." He scrawled a quick note for Victoria, tea on the table. "Text if you need anything, rest," and let himself out quietly. The drive home felt longer than usual, Daniel's mind churning through everything that had happened. A week ago, he'd had a job, a plan, some semblance of control. Now Morrison and Blake was pressuring him to leave. Victoria was trapped on bed rest for months, and the baby's survival still hung in uncertain balance. But underneath the chaos, something else had shifted. In that hospital room, sitting vigil while Victoria slept and the monitors beeped, Daniel had felt something he hadn't felt since Sarah died. Purpose. Connection. The sense that he was exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what mattered. Emma met him at the door, still wearing her soccer uniform from practice. "How's Victoria?" "Tired, scared, but home and resting." "And the baby?" "Still fighting." Daniel pulled Emma into a hug, needing the grounding presence of his daughter. "How was school?" "Fine. Grandma made pot roast again. I told her we had it last week, but she forgot." Emma's voice was muffled against his chest. "Dad, are you going to lose your job?" Daniel pulled back to look at her. "What makes you think that?" "I heard you on the phone with someone from work about Boston." Emma's eyes were too knowing for 10 years old. "Are we moving?" "No, we're staying right here." "But if you lose your job, then I'll find another one." "Emma, look at me." Daniel crouched to her level. "I know everything feels uncertain right now, but some things aren't changing. We're staying in Seattle. You're staying in your school. This is our home, and we're not leaving it." "Even if it means you don't have work?" "Even then. My job isn't more important than our family, than you and the baby and making sure everyone's taken care of." Emma studied his face, then nodded slowly. "Okay. But Dad, if you need to get a different job, maybe you could get one where you're home more. You work a lot." The observation hit harder than it should have. Daniel had thrown himself into work after Sarah died, using 60-hour weeks to avoid the empty house and emptier bed. Emma had grown up with a father who was physically present but emotionally absent more often than not. "You're right," Daniel admitted. "I do work too much. Maybe this is a chance to change that." They ate dinner together, Emma chattering about soccer practice and a boy in her class who'd gotten in trouble for bringing a lizard to school. Normal, mundane conversation that felt like a lifeline to sanity. After Emma went to bed, Daniel sat at his kitchen table with his laptop, updating his resume for the first time in 8 years. His phone rang close to midnight. "Victoria." "Did I wake you?" she asked. "Couldn't sleep. How are you feeling?" "Weird being home alone. I kept waking up expecting nurses to check my vitals." A pause. "Thank you for the tea. And the note. And for getting me settled before you left." "You're welcome. I called a nursing service. Someone's coming tomorrow to help with meals and medications and make sure I'm not doing anything stupid." "Good. That's good." Another pause, longer this time. "Daniel, about what you said in the hospital, about us being family. I meant it." "I know. That's what scares me." Victoria's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I don't know how to be part of a family. My parents are strangers who happen to share my DNA. I don't have siblings. I've spent my entire adult life alone by choice because it was safer than depending on people who might leave." "I'm not leaving." "You say that now. But what happens when this gets hard? When the baby's crying at 3 a.m. and we're both exhausted and resentful? When co-parenting means negotiating every decision and compromising on things we care about? What happens when the novelty wears off and you remember, I'm just the woman who complicated your life? Daniel heard the fear beneath the words, the vulnerability Victoria rarely let anyone see. You want to know what I think happens? I think we fight sometimes. We disagree. We get frustrated. And then we figure it out because that's what parents do. We show up even when it's hard. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's worth it. Victoria was quiet for so long Daniel thought she might have fallen asleep. Then, softly, I felt the baby move today. Just a flutter, like bubbles. The nurse said it was probably too early, that I was imagining it. But I know what I felt. That's amazing. It made it real in a way it hasn't been before. Not just a heartbeat on a monitor or a blob on an ultrasound, an actual person in there, moving around, alive. Her voice caught. We made a person, Daniel. We did. I'm terrified I'm going to screw them up. Join the club. Every parent feels that way. How do you deal with it? The fear. Daniel thought about Emma asleep upstairs, about all the ways he'd already screwed up and the ways he'd managed to get things right. You love them anyway. You do your best, and you forgive yourself when you fall short, and you keep showing up. That's all any of us can do. They talked until nearly 2 in the morning, conversations that ranged from baby names to childhood memories to the surreal reality of their situation. By the time they hung up, Daniel felt like he understood Victoria better than he had after months of working in the same building. The next morning brought an email from Margaret Cho requesting a meeting. Daniel read it 3 times, trying to divine meaning from the formal corporate language. He called Marcus before responding. They're going to fire me, Daniel said without preamble. You don't know that. I declined the Boston transfer. What else could it be? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Look, I shouldn't tell you this, but I heard rumors. The board's divided. Half want you gone, half think forcing you out looks worse than keeping you. It's political. When did my life become a political chess game? When you got the CEO pregnant, man. That's pretty much the definition of workplace politics. Daniel laughed despite himself. Fair point. For what it's worth, everyone in our department thinks this is bullshit. You're a good analyst. You've never let personal stuff affect your work. And the Victoria thing is between consenting adults. But the old guard on the board sees it as a scandal. What should I do? Go to the meeting. Hear them out. Don't make any decisions you'll regret. Marcus paused. And Daniel, have a backup plan. Just in case. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. Daniel spent the intervening days visiting Victoria, stocking her kitchen with food she could actually eat, and helping coordinate with the nursing service. The nurse, a cheerful woman named Rosa, who'd raised 5 children of her own, took one look at Victoria's pristine apartment and declared it completely unsuitable for bed rest. "You need entertainment," Rosa announced. "Books, magazines, streaming services. Something to keep your mind occupied or you'll go crazy." "I have my laptop," Victoria protested. "I can work from bed." "Absolutely not." Rosa's tone brooked no argument. "Doctor said bed rest, not bed work. You want to keep that baby safe? You rest. Really rest." Victoria looked mutinous, but Rosa just smiled and started rearranging furniture to make the bedroom more comfortable for long-term confinement. Daniel watched from the doorway, amused despite everything. "She's terrifying," Victoria said after Rosa left to pick up supplies. "She's exactly what you need." "I need to work. I need to feel useful. Lying in bed doing nothing is going to kill me faster than the pregnancy complications." "Then find other ways to feel useful. Read that stack of books you've been meaning to get to. Learn a new language. Take an online course in something random." Daniel sat on the edge of the bed. "Or just let yourself rest. Being pregnant and keeping a baby alive is useful enough." "Intellectually, I know you're right. Emotionally, I want to throw my laptop at your head." "Please don't. It looks expensive and I can't afford to replace it." Victoria's expression shifted. "What happened with Morrison and Blake? You've been avoiding talking about it." "Meeting on Thursday. I'll know more then." "I'm sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't gotten pregnant, if we'd been more careful—" "Stop. We've been over this. We're both responsible for the situation." Daniel covered her hand with his. "Whatever happens Thursday, we'll deal with it." "You keep saying that like it's a magic spell that'll make everything okay." "Maybe it is. Maybe choosing to deal with things together is the magic." Victoria rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "You're ridiculously optimistic for someone whose life is falling apart." "My life's not falling apart. It's just rearranging itself." "Into what?" "I have no idea, but I'm curious to find out." Thursday arrived with typical Seattle rain, the sky gray and heavy. Daniel dressed in his best suit again, armor for battle. Emma made him promise to text her after the meeting, her worry evident despite her attempts to hide it. The Morrison and Blake building felt different walking in knowing he might be walking out for the last time. Daniel nodded to familiar faces in the elevator, wondering if they knew about the pregnancy, the scandal, the precarious position he occupied. Margaret Cho's office was on the 41st floor, one below Victoria's executive suite. Daniel had been here before for performance reviews and departmental meetings, but never for something that would determine his entire future. Margaret greeted him professionally, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. Two other people were already seated: Robert Chen from Legal and Amanda Foster from the board's Human Resources Committee. "Thank you for coming, Daniel," Margaret began. "I'll get straight to the point. The board has discussed your situation extensively, and we've reached a decision regarding your employment." Daniel's heart hammered, but he kept his expression neutral. "I'm listening." "Given the complexity of your relationship with Ms. Lane and the potential conflicts of interest, we're offering you a different position within the company. You'd be moving to a newly created role in our risk assessment division, reporting directly to the CFO rather than through Victoria's chain of command. Same salary, same benefits, but completely separate from any projects or decisions Victoria might influence." Daniel blinked. "You're not firing me?" "We considered it," Amanda Foster said bluntly, "but ultimately decided that would create more problems than it solves. You're a valuable employee with a strong performance record. This way we eliminate the conflict while retaining your expertise." "What about when Victoria returns from leave?" "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, the important thing is maintaining clear professional boundaries." Robert Chen slid a packet across the table. "This outlines the new position in detail, including reporting structure and responsibilities. We need your answer by Monday." Daniel picked up the packet, scanning the first page. Risk assessment wasn't his specialty, but it was adjacent enough to his current work that the transition wouldn't be jarring. And staying at Morrison and Blake meant stability, health insurance, familiar territory. "Can I ask a question?" Daniel said. "Of course," Margaret replied. "Is this offer contingent on anything? My relationship with Victoria, the baby, how we handle co-parenting?" "Your personal life is your own business," Amanda said. "As long as it doesn't interfere with your professional responsibilities, we don't care if you're together, apart, or somewhere in between." "What about Victoria? Does she know about this offer?" Margaret and Amanda exchanged glances. Ms. Lane is on medical leave, Margaret said carefully. Her focus needs to be on her health and the pregnancy. We'll brief her when appropriate. In other words, they'd made this decision without consulting Victoria, probably knowing she'd push back against anything that looked like special treatment for Daniel. He appreciated the political maneuvering even as it annoyed him. I'll review this and give you an answer Monday, Daniel said, tucking the packet under his arm. One more thing, Robert Chen added. This needs to stay confidential until it's finalized. We don't want rumors spreading about preferential treatment or behind-the-scenes deals. Understood. Daniel left the building in a daze, not fired, not exiled to Boston, given a lifeline he hadn't expected and wasn't sure he deserved. He sat in his car in the parking garage, reading through the position details more carefully. The work was interesting, analyzing corporate risk exposure, developing mitigation strategies, advising on major financial decisions. It would be challenging but manageable, and most importantly, it meant staying in Seattle, keeping his health insurance, providing stability for Emma and the baby. He called Victoria before driving away. How'd it go? She asked immediately. They offered me a new position, risk assessment, reporting to the CFO. Same pay, different chain of command. Silence. Then, they went around me. You're on medical leave. They said they'd brief you later. I'm on bed rest, not brain dead. They should have consulted me. Victoria's anger was sharp even over the phone. This is exactly what I was afraid of, being sidelined, having decisions made about my own company without my input. Is it worth fighting over? They're trying to solve the conflict of interest problem by creating a position out of thin air and shuffling you around like a chess piece. What happens in 6 months when I come back? Do they keep shuffling you every time I might have influence over your career? Daniel hadn't thought that far ahead. I don't know. But Victoria, this is better than the alternatives. I keep my job, stay in Seattle, maintain insurance for when the baby comes. Isn't that worth some political maneuvering? Victoria exhaled slowly. You're right. I know you're right. I just hate feeling powerless. Join the club. We're all powerless right now. We're just choosing how to respond to it. When did you become so philosophical? Desperation breeds wisdom. Daniel started the car. I'm coming over. We should talk about this in person. You don't have to. I know. I want to. He found Victoria in her bedroom, surrounded by pillows that Rosa had arranged into a nest. The nurse was in the kitchen preparing lunch, humming cheerfully. Victoria looked both comfortable and trapped, a combination Daniel was starting to recognize. Rosa won't let me use my laptop, Victoria complained as Daniel entered. She hid it somewhere and says I'm not getting it back until the baby's born. Good for Rosa. You're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side. That's why I'm agreeing with the woman trying to keep you and the baby healthy. Daniel settled into the armchair Rosa had positioned beside the bed. Besides, when was the last time you took a real break from work? Victoria opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. I don't remember. Exactly. Maybe this forced rest is a gift in disguise. A gift I'd like to return for store credit. Despite her grumbling, Victoria seemed more relaxed than Daniel had seen her in weeks. Rosa's influence was already evident. Fresh flowers on the nightstand, classical music playing softly, a stack of novels from genres Victoria had mentioned enjoying. Tell me about the position, Victoria said. The real details, not the corporate summary. Daniel walked her through everything, watching her CEO brain analyze and strategize even from bed rest. She asked sharp questions about reporting structures, project scope, potential career implications. By the time he finished, she'd identified 3 ways the position could actually advance his career if he played it right. You should take it, she concluded. It's a good move strategically. Even though they went around you to offer it? Especially because they went around me. It proves the board is trying to solve this professionally rather than just firing you to make problems go away. I can work with that. Work with it how? You're on bed rest until September. Victoria's smile was sharp. Bed rest doesn't mean brain rest. I can't be in the office, but I can still make calls, send emails, remind the board why they made me CEO in the first place. The doctor said no stress. The doctor said no physical stress. Mental chess with the board is my idea of relaxation. Daniel laughed despite himself. You're impossible. So I've been told. Victoria shifted position, wincing slightly. The baby's been active today. I think they're doing gymnastics in there. Can I feel? The question came out before Daniel thought about it, intimate and presumptuous. But Victoria just pulled up her shirt slightly, revealing the small bump that had become visible in the past few weeks. Here, she said, guiding his hand to the right spot. Wait for it. They sat in silence, Daniel's palm warm against Victoria's skin. Then, there. A tiny flutter, barely perceptible. Another. Like butterflies or bubbles or something entirely indescribable. That's... Daniel's voice caught. That's our baby! That's our baby! Victoria confirmed, her eyes bright. They stayed like that for several minutes, Daniel's hand on Victoria's stomach, feeling their child move and kick and assert their existence. In that moment, all the corporate politics and board meetings and career decisions felt distant and small. This was what mattered. This tiny life they'd created, fighting to grow despite complications and chaos. I'm taking the job, Daniel said quietly. Not because it's politically smart or strategically sound, because it means I can be here. For you and the baby, and whatever comes next. Victoria covered his hand with hers. Thank you. For choosing us. You say that like it was a hard choice. Wasn't it? No, it was the easiest choice I've made in years. Rosa appeared in the doorway with lunch, diplomatically clearing her throat. Daniel removed his hand and stood, giving Victoria space. I should go, he said. Let you rest. But I'll be back tomorrow. Daniel? Victoria caught his hand before he could leave. I'm glad you're staying in Seattle at Morrison and Blake in our lives. I'm glad you're staying. Me too. The next week settled into a rhythm. Daniel accepted the new position and started work in risk assessment, finding the change refreshing after 8 years in the same role. Emma adjusted to their new normal with the resilience of children, splitting her time between school, soccer, and visits to Victoria's apartment where Rosa had become something like a grandmother figure. Victoria remained on strict bed rest, chafing against the restrictions but following Rosa's rules with surprising obedience. The baby continued to grow, each ultrasound showing more details, fingers and toes, a profile that looked startlingly human, movements that grew stronger each week. At 24 weeks, they learned the sex. Are you sure you want to know? Dr. Morrison asked during the ultrasound appointment. Daniel had taken the afternoon off to attend, something his new boss had approved without question. Yes, Victoria said immediately. I need to plan. I can't plan without knowing. The doctor smiled. You're having a girl. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. A daughter. Another daughter. Emma would have a sister. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. A girl. We're having a girl. Charlotte, Daniel said softly, if you still like that name. Charlotte Victoria Lane Harper, Victoria tested. Too much of a mouthful? Charlotte Lane Harper, Daniel suggested. Or Charlotte Harper Lane. We'll figure it out. Victoria was still crying, happy tears that she didn't bother wiping away. We're having a daughter, Daniel. They celebrated with ice cream, doctor-approved and delivered by Rosa, and FaceTime with Emma, who shrieked so loudly that half the neighborhood probably heard. I'm getting a sister, Emma yelled. Can she sleep in my room sometimes? Can I teach her soccer? Can we paint her room purple? Slow down, Daniel laughed. One thing at a time. But he understood Emma's excitement, felt it mirrored in his own chest. A daughter, a sister. Their family expanding in ways that had seemed impossible months ago. That night, Daniel lay in bed thinking about names and nursery colors and the strange path that had led him here. A year ago, he'd been sleepwalking through life, going through motions without really living. Now everything was uncertain and complicated and terrifying, and somehow, impossibly, that felt exactly right. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Victoria. I can't sleep. Keep thinking about her, about Charlotte, about everything that could still go wrong. Daniel. Nothing's going to go wrong. You're doing everything right. Victoria. You can't promise that. Daniel. No, but I can promise I'll be there whatever happens. Good or bad, we're in this together. Victoria. Why do you keep saying that? Daniel, because it's true, and because I think you need to hear it. A long pause. Then, Victoria, I do need to hear it, more than I want to admit. Daniel, then I'll keep saying it, as many times as you need. Victoria, thank you for everything, for staying when you could have run, for choosing us. Daniel, best choice I ever made. Victoria, even better than that tragic mustache you had in your employee photo? Daniel, how do you know about that? Victoria, I'm the CEO. I know everything. Daniel, that was 8 years ago, and we agreed never to speak of it. Victoria, you agreed. I made no such promise. Also, I'm saving that photo for Charlotte. She'll need embarrassing dad stories. Daniel laughed, the sound echoing in his quiet bedroom. Somewhere across the city, Victoria was laughing too, and their daughter was growing, and life was impossibly complicated and absolutely perfect. At 28 weeks, Victoria's water broke. Rosa called Daniel at 2 in the morning, her voice urgent. You need to get to the hospital, now! They're taking her into emergency surgery. Daniel was out of bed and moving before his brain fully processed the words. He called his parents to stay with Emma, threw on clothes, and drove to Swedish Medical Center, breaking every speed limit. Too early. 28 weeks was too early. Babies could survive at 28 weeks, but they needed intensive care, weeks or months in the NICU, complications and risks, and Daniel couldn't finish the thought. He just drove, praying to whoever might be listening that Charlotte would be okay, that Victoria would be okay, that their family wouldn't end before it truly began. The hospital was bright and chaotic when he arrived. A nurse directed him to the surgical waiting area where he found Gerald and Patricia Lane already seated, both looking gray and frightened. What happened? Daniel demanded. Placental abruption, Patricia said, her voice shaking. Complete separation this time. They have to deliver immediately, or... She didn't finish, but Daniel understood. Or they'd both die. Is Victoria in surgery? They're doing a C-section, emergency. Gerald's voice was gruff. 20 minutes ago. Daniel sank into a chair, his legs giving out. 28 weeks. Charlotte would be so small, so vulnerable. Her lungs might not be developed enough. Her immune system, her everything. Time crawled. 10 minutes. 20. 45. Then a doctor emerged, still in surgical scrubs. Family of Victoria Lane? They all stood at once. The surgery went well. Victoria is stable and recovering. The baby... The doctor smiled. Your daughter is in the NICU. She's small, 2 pounds 3 ounces, but she's breathing with assistance and fighting hard. Daniel's knees buckled. Patricia caught his arm. Can we see them? Gerald asked. Victoria will be in recovery for another hour, but you can see the baby now. One at a time to start. They all looked at Daniel. You go, Patricia said softly. You're her father. You should meet her first. Daniel followed the doctor through a maze of hallways to the NICU, scrubbing his hands and arms at the entrance like he was told. The unit was dimmer than the rest of the hospital, quiet except for the beeping of monitors and soft sounds of medical equipment. And there, in an incubator that seemed impossibly large for the impossibly small creature inside, was Charlotte. She was tiny. So tiny Daniel couldn't comprehend how something so small could be a complete human being. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that breathed for her, monitored her, kept her alive. But underneath all the medical intervention, he could see her, Victoria's nose, his own stubborn chin, fingers that curled and uncurled like she was already fighting. You can touch her, the NICU nurse said gently. Through the ports. She needs to know you're here. Daniel slipped his hands through the openings in the incubator, carefully touching Charlotte's impossibly small hand. Her fingers wrapped around his pinky, gripping with surprising strength. And just like that, Daniel fell completely, irrevocably in love. Hey, Charlotte, he whispered. I'm your dad, and you're the most beautiful, perfect thing I've ever seen. You're going to be okay, sweetheart. You're going to fight and grow and come home to us. I promise. She couldn't hear him, probably, but Daniel kept talking anyway, telling her about her big sister Emma, who was so excited to meet her, about her mom who'd fought so hard to keep her safe, about the family waiting to welcome her home. The nurse eventually told him he needed to give others a turn, that Victoria was awake and asking for him. Daniel reluctantly pulled his hands from the incubator, already aching to return. Victoria looked small in the hospital bed, pale and exhausted, but alive. Her eyes found Daniel immediately. "Is she—" "Perfect," Daniel said, moving to her side. "Small, but perfect. Fighting like her mother." Victoria's face crumpled. "I couldn't keep her safe. I tried so hard, and I couldn't—" "Hey, no. You kept her safe for 28 weeks. You gave her a fighting chance. That's everything." 2 pounds. The doctor said she's only 2 pounds, Daniel. That's nothing. "It's enough. Charlotte's strong. She's going to make it." Victoria searched his face, looking for certainty he didn't have. But he held her gaze steady, willing her to believe. "Charlotte," Victoria repeated. "We're really calling her that?" "Unless you have a better idea." "No, Charlotte's perfect." She squeezed his hand weakly. "Can you bring Emma to meet her? I know she's in the NICU, but Emma should meet her sister." "Tomorrow, when you're feeling better." "I want to see her again. Charlotte, can you—" "I'll take you down as soon as the doctors clear it." Daniel brushed hair from Victoria's forehead. "Rest now. Both of you are safe. That's what matters." Victoria's eyes drifted closed, exhaustion winning. Daniel stayed beside her bed, holding her hand, thinking about their daughter fighting for life, 1 floor down. Outside, dawn was breaking over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day. A new beginning. And somewhere in the NICU, Charlotte Lane Harper continued to breathe, to fight, to live. Their family wasn't complete yet, but it was real, and it was theirs, and Daniel would protect it with everything he had. The first 48 hours were the longest of Daniel's life. He divided his time between Victoria's recovery room and Charlotte's isolette in the NICU, sleeping in chairs and surviving on vending machine coffee. Emma came the second day, scrubbed and gowned like a tiny surgeon, to meet her sister through the transparent walls of the incubator. "She's so small," Emma whispered, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. "Is she going to be okay?" "The doctors say she's doing better than expected," Daniel said, though his own heart clenched every time an alarm beeped or a nurse rushed over. "She just needs time to grow." Emma pressed her hand against the incubator. "Hi, Charlotte. I'm your big sister, Emma. I'm going to teach you everything when you come home. Soccer and bike riding, and how to make Dad laugh when he's being too serious." Daniel's throat closed. He pulled Emma against his side, grateful beyond words for this daughter who'd already claimed her role in their expanding family. Victoria was discharged after 5 days, but she refused to go home. Instead, she checked into a hotel across from the hospital, spending every allowed moment in the NICU. Daniel found her there late one night, sitting in the rocking chair beside Charlotte's isolette, reading aloud from a children's book about brave little girls. "The nurses say she can hear me," Victoria explained without looking up, "that it helps her brain development. So I read to her. Tell her stories about what her life will be like when she comes home." Daniel settled into the chair beside her. "What kind of stories?" "Silly ones, mostly. About how her big sister is going to dress her in ridiculous outfits and convince her that vegetables are actually candy. About how her father is secretly a softie who'll probably let her get away with everything." Victoria's voice caught. "About how her mother is going to try very hard not to screw this up." "You're not going to screw this up. You don't know that. I don't know the first thing about being a mother. I can barely keep a houseplant alive." "Good thing babies aren't houseplants." Daniel reached through the isolette ports to touch Charlotte's tiny foot. "And you're already being a great mother. You're here. You're showing up. That's what matters." Victoria finally looked at him, exhaustion evident in every line of her face. "When do you sleep?" "When do you?" "Touché." She closed the book. "The doctors say if she keeps improving at this rate, she might be able to come home in 6 to 8 weeks. That seems both impossibly long and terrifyingly soon." "We'll be ready." "Will we, though? I don't have a nursery set up. I don't have any baby equipment. I've been so focused on just keeping her alive that I haven't thought about what comes after." "That's what the next 6 weeks are for. We'll figure it out together." There was that word again. Together. It had become their mantra, the promise they returned to whenever fear threatened to overwhelm. Charlotte's progress was measured in ounces and milliliters, small victories that felt monumental. She graduated from a ventilator to a CPAP mask. She started taking tiny amounts of breast milk through a feeding tube. Her weight crept up, 2 pounds, 8 ounces, 2 pounds 12, 3 pounds even. Daniel brought Emma to visit every few days, watching his daughters bond across the barrier of medical necessity. Emma would press her hands to the incubator and sing songs she'd learned in music class, her voice soft and surprisingly sweet. Charlotte seemed to respond, her tiny body settling when Emma was near. "She knows you," Victoria said one evening, watching the sisters. Charlotte definitely knows Emma's voice. "They're going to be close," Daniel predicted. "Emma's already planning their future. She's got a whole list of things to teach Charlotte when she's old enough." "What's on the list?" "Soccer, obviously. How to negotiate for extra dessert. The proper way to roll your eyes at Dad's terrible jokes." Daniel smiled. "Emma's convinced Charlotte is going to be brilliant and athletic and probably rule the world someday. With those genes, probably not wrong." It was a moment of lightness in the heavy weeks, and they both held on to it. The NICU became their second home. Daniel learned the names of all the nurses, which ones would bend the rules about visiting hours, which ones to ask for updates. Victoria mastered the art of kangaroo care, holding Charlotte skin to skin for hours, while the baby's heart rate stabilized and her breathing strengthened. Daniel watched them during those sessions, Victoria with Charlotte nestled against her chest, both of them peaceful in a way he rarely saw, and felt something shift in his own chest. This wasn't obligation anymore. It wasn't just responsibility or doing the right thing. This was love. Complicated, messy, unexpected love for both of these females who'd crashed into his carefully controlled life and blown it wide open. At 4 weeks old, Charlotte opened her eyes for the first time during one of Daniel's visits. Her gaze was unfocused, uncertain, but undeniably aware. Daniel felt tears stream down his face as he talked to her, watching those tiny eyes try to track his voice. "Hi, sweetheart. It's Dad. You're doing so good, so incredibly good." A nurse documented the moment in Charlotte's chart. Another milestone. Another step toward home. Victoria's parents visited weekly, Gerald softening incrementally each time he saw Charlotte fight. Patricia had taken to knitting, badly, according to Victoria, producing a collection of misshapen baby clothes that were hideous and perfect in equal measure. "My mother has never knitted in her life," Victoria told Daniel after one visit, "but apparently becoming a grandmother has activated some dormant domestic gene. Last week she brought booties that don't match. The week before, a hat that would fit a watermelon. It's sweet. It's weird, but also kind of sweet, yes." Daniel's own parents had become fixtures too, his mother bringing homemade meals for Daniel and Victoria, his father offering to help set up the nursery that Victoria was finally, reluctantly planning. "We should coordinate," Victoria said one evening as they sat in the NICU break room comparing notes on baby supplies. "Your place and mine, so Charlotte has what she needs in both locations." It was the first real conversation about custody they'd had since before Charlotte was born, the elephant they'd been avoiding while their daughter fought for life. "What are you thinking?" Daniel asked carefully. "Week on, week off, maybe? Once she's old enough and stable enough? For now, she should probably be primarily at one place with consistent caregiving." Victoria twisted her coffee cup. "Which probably means your place since you have Emma and more experience with babies. Or your place since you'll be on maternity leave and have more time." They looked at each other, both recognizing the minefield they were navigating. "We're going to have to actually figure this out," Victoria said. "No more avoiding it because it's uncomfortable." "I know. So let's figure it out, right now. What do you want, Daniel? Honestly." Daniel thought about his answer, wanting to get it right. "I want Charlotte to feel equally at home in both places. I want her to know both her parents love her and are present in her life. I want us to make decisions together, even when we disagree." He paused. "And I want whatever's best for her, even if it's not what's easiest for me." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. "What if we tried something different? Not week on, week off, but more fluid. We live, 20 minutes apart? What if we just share her? You come to my place or I come to yours. Whoever's turn it is to handle night duty. We both stay involved, both present, without shuffling Charlotte back and forth constantly. That's not how most custody arrangements work. We're not most custody arrangements. Victoria met his gaze steadily. We're two people who care about each other and our daughter. Why should we follow someone else's template? The casual mention of caring about each other hung in the air between them. Daniel didn't comment on it directly, but he felt it settle somewhere near his heart. Okay, he said. Let's try it. We figure out what works as we go, adjust when needed, and keep Charlotte's needs at the center. Just like that? Just like that. Victoria smiled, real and warm. You make everything sound so simple. That's because I think we've been overcomplicating things. We're both reasonable adults who want the same thing. The details will work themselves out. At 6 weeks old, Charlotte was breathing entirely on her own and taking all her feeds from a bottle. The doctors started talking about discharge, about home monitoring and follow-up appointments, and the surreal reality of finally leaving the hospital. I'm terrified, Victoria admitted the night before Charlotte was scheduled to go home. What if I do something wrong? What if she stops breathing and I don't notice? What if... We'll have monitors, nurses coming to check on her, phone numbers for every doctor and specialist. Daniel wrapped his arm around Victoria's shoulders, a gesture that had become natural over the weeks in the NICU. And we'll have each other. When you're scared, I'll be the calm one. When I'm falling apart, you can hold it together. What if we're both falling apart simultaneously? Then we'll call Rosa. She's handled 5 kids. She'll talk us off the ledge. Victoria laughed, leaning into him. They'd been touching more lately, hands held during stressful doctor updates, hugs exchanged after particularly good news, casual contact that spoke of comfort and trust building between them. Daniel was aware of it, the way their relationship was shifting and deepening. But he didn't push it, didn't try to define it. They had enough to deal with without adding romantic pressure to the mix. The day they brought Charlotte home, to Victoria's apartment, as they'd decided together, felt both anticlimactic and momentous. Charlotte slept through most of it, tiny and perfect in the car seat that looked absurdly large around her 5-pound frame. Emma was waiting at the apartment with Daniel's parents, having helped Rosa prepare a welcome home celebration. Balloons and streamers, a cake decorated with Welcome Home Charlotte, and enough baby supplies to stock a small store. Can I hold her? Emma asked the moment they walked in, practically vibrating with excitement. Gentle, Daniel cautioned as he helped Emma settle on the couch, with pillows supporting her arms. Support her head, just like that. Perfect. Emma stared down at her sister with such pure love that Daniel had to look away, blinking back tears. Charlotte gazed up at Emma with those unfocused newborn eyes, and Daniel could swear she recognized her sister's voice. Hi, Charlotte, Emma whispered. I'm so glad you're finally home. I have so much to show you. The first night home was chaos. Charlotte woke every 2 hours to eat, her cries surprisingly loud for such a small creature. Victoria handled the feedings while Daniel changed diapers and monitored the oxygen saturation machine the hospital had sent home with them. This is harder than running a Fortune 500 company, Victoria muttered around 3 in the morning. Charlotte finally settled after a particularly fussy feeding. Welcome to parenthood, Daniel collapsed on the couch beside her. It doesn't get easier, just different. Encouraging. I try. They fell asleep like that, Charlotte in her bassinet nearby, Daniel and Victoria slumped against each other on the couch, too exhausted to make it to actual beds. Rosa found them that way in the morning and took approximately 400 pictures before waking them up for coffee. The weeks that followed established their new normal. Daniel would come to Victoria's apartment after work, often bringing Emma. They'd make dinner together, or more accurately, Rosa would make dinner while they attempted to help and mostly got in the way. Emma would do homework at the dining table while Daniel gave Charlotte a bottle or Victoria did tummy time. On weekends, they'd reverse, Victoria bringing Charlotte to Daniel's house where Emma had decorated the spare bedroom with every purple thing she could find. The nursery was chaotic and perfect, a blend of Emma's enthusiastic choices and Victoria's attempts at sophistication. I can't believe you let her paint clouds on the ceiling, Victoria said, staring up at Emma's handiwork. They're supposed to be clouds. I think they might actually be potatoes. Daniel bounced Charlotte gently. but Emma worked so hard on them. I couldn't say no. You're going to be the parent who can't say no to anything, aren't you? Probably. That's why Charlotte needs you. Someone has to provide discipline and structure. Great. I get to be the bad guy. Not bad guy. Balance. Daniel smiled. We balance each other out. I'm too soft, you're too structured. Somewhere in the middle is probably healthy parenting. Victoria watched him with Charlotte, the easy way he held their daughter, the gentle competence born of experience. You're really good at this. I've had practice. It's more than that. You're natural with her, patient and calm and exactly what she needs. She's easy to love. Victoria reached for Charlotte, taking her from Daniel and cradling her close. She really is, isn't she? Even when she's screaming at 2 a.m. and I'm so tired I could cry, I look at her and just... She stopped, overwhelmed. I know, Daniel said softly. I know exactly what you mean. 3 months after Charlotte came home, Daniel and Victoria fell into a rhythm so natural that they sometimes forgot they weren't actually together. They'd text throughout the day, Charlotte's feeding schedule, Emma's soccer games, random thoughts that needed sharing. They'd FaceTime in the evenings so whoever didn't have Charlotte could see her before bed. Emma split her time between houses, declaring both her homes and adapting with the flexibility of childhood. She'd appointed herself Charlotte's primary entertainer, performing elaborate shows that consisted mostly of her making faces while Charlotte stared in fascination. She smiled at me, Emma reported one Saturday. A real smile, not just gas. She thinks I'm funny. You are funny, sweetheart, Daniel confirmed. Charlotte has excellent taste, Victoria added, looking up from where she was attempting to get Charlotte to nap. They were at Daniel's house, the four of them sprawling across the living room in various states of relaxation. It felt domestic and right in a way Daniel hadn't experienced since Sarah died. Later, after Emma went to bed and Charlotte finally succumbed to sleep, Daniel and Victoria found themselves on the back porch with glasses of wine, the baby monitor between them. Can I ask you something? Victoria said, staring out at Daniel's modest backyard. Always. What is this? What are we doing? Daniel knew she wasn't talking about custody arrangements or parenting strategies. What do you want us to be doing? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. Victoria turned to face him. We're not dating, but we're also not just co-parents. We're something in between, something I don't have a name for. Does it need a name? I'm a CEO. Everything needs clear definition and categorization. Even relationships? Especially relationships. Victoria set down her wine glass. I care about you, Daniel, more than I expected to, more than is probably smart given our situation, and I don't know what to do with that. Daniel's heart rate picked up. They'd been dancing around this for months, both aware of the growing connection, but neither willing to name it. I care about you too, he admitted. I think I have for a while now, since the hospital maybe, or before. It's hard to pinpoint when co-parenting became something more. So what do we do about it? We could date, like actual adults who are interested in each other.